Om Shri Sai Ram. Welcome to the last day's proceedings for the Indo-US Conference 2. I welcome the speakers and the participants for this conference. Over to Dr. Avadesh from Department of Mathematics and Computer Science to take the proceedings further. Dr. Avadesh.
Sai Ram to everyone, offering my humble pranam at the divine lotus feet of Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. A very good morning to all of you. Today we have morning session speaker Dr. Sudeepa Chauhan.
Yeah. Good morning.
Dr. Sudeepa Chauhan is currently as an assistant professor in Amity Institute of Applied Sciences. She did her post-graduation MSc in Mathematics from Jivaji University in year 2005. She is a member of World Academy Science, Engineering and Technology and also a member of International Association of Engineers. She is a reviewer of International Journal of Biomathematics, World Scientific. She gave an invited lecture on simultaneous effect of disease and intoxicant on prey-predator system at TIFR Bengaluru in year 2014. With this brief introduction, I would like to hand over this session to Dr. Sudeepa Chauhan. Over to ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much for such a lovely introduction. So without wasting much time, I think I can share my screens. Can you all please tell if it's visible to you all? Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So a very good morning to all of you. So thank you to the organizers also to giving me an opportunity to share a few of my thoughts on this particular theme in this Indo-US conference. Earlier, I was thinking of giving some aspects of my epidemic modeling, but later on, I thought that this is a very relevant topic nowadays. So I switched it and I will be trying to brief something related to few aspects in economy. So because in the current time of COVID scenario, this is also going to be affected a lot. So before coming to some of the modeling aspects that how we can model for these particular economic models, we should we should have a very good understanding about some of the very basic models in it. So I'll be starting with some of the theories on a few aspects of economy. Then we will be coming to the rest of the topics in it. Okay, so first of all, what are the main bifurcations which you are supposed to have in economics? So we basically have two segments in economics. One is your microeconomics and the other is your macroeconomics. So whenever I'm talking for microeconomics, it is actually dealing with a very small group, an individual or a very small company or so on. But whenever we are talking for a macroeconomics, we are actually talking for the national economy, or we can talk for the GDP, the unemployment rates, the national income, the capital stock. So these all things comes under macroeconomics. So in macroeconomics also there is a very important concept to be understood, that is a business cycle model. So what is a business cycle model? It is also called as a trade cycle. Sometimes you can say it as an economic cycle, and it is actually a fluctuation in the economy. So the fluctuations occurs either if you are expanding the economy or you're contracting the economy. Okay, so there are various basic characteristics of a business cycle model. So the first characteristic is you always have a cyclic fluctuations like wave-like movements you can have. And these wave-like movements are recurrent. You can continuously have this, but it may not be periodic. It's generally non-periodic or it's generally irregular. And you cannot have for a seasonal fluctuations. So whenever I'm talking for seasonal fluctuations, that means it's not mandated that after every particular time period, you are going to have a recession or a depression and again you come to a peak. So that is why there cannot be a seasonal fluctuations in it. So you can see this particular graph, which will be giving you a better understanding that what kind of phases a business cycles can have. So this is ideally a graph in between the real output and the time, and we always find it in a growing trend. But you can see that economy is at a very peak, then it comes to a recession, then again it regains, it goes for a recovery, and this cycles goes on. And as I said, there can be different time periods for this particular business cycle. So when I'm talking for the time periods, these business cycles are again divided into number of years. So for example, if I'm talking for only a business cycle of 3.5 years, so that means I'm assuming that the recession may be coming after 3.5 years. It can come after 9.5 years, 18 years, 22 years, or in fact 50 years. So right now, if I'm talking in the case of COVID scenario, so obviously we'll be talking for a short kitchen cycle where we can have it for 3.5 years. So what is actually the prediction of kitchen cycle? It talks about the demands, it talks about the prices, it talks about the outputs in it. So right now we are in a kitchen cycle and it is going for a recession, that means to a downwards in the quarter 2, but we are actually thinking that in the near future it is going to again considered for a peak. So you'll be having more and more of productions in it. So this is a short kitchen cycle in aspect with the COVID. Now coming to some of the basic terminologies which will be required whenever we'll be understanding the basic models in it. So the first definition is of real sector. So what is a real sector? It is a sector which produces goods and services. Okay, so that is used and that is contributing to the economy. But there is a different other type of sector also, which is called as your monetary sector. So whenever I'm talking for a monetary sector, that means it's covering the circulation of the money. Okay. But the ownership is always of the real sector is taken by the monetary sector. Okay. Then come an important definition, that is of fiscal policies. So what are fiscal policies? When the government tries to bring in some money by introducing any kind of projects, any kind of policies, then that is one of the type of fiscal policy when it wants to boom the economy. And if it wants to shrink the economy, then always it will be talking for high taxes or increasing demand. So these all small things always comes under a fiscal policy. We also have a monetary policy in this. So what's a monetary policy? When a central bank regulates the money by either increasing or decreasing the rate of interest, then it is said to be a monetary policy. And the last, the very important, that is called as a liquidity trap. So what's a liquidity trap? It's a situation in which interest rates are very low and the savings rates are very high. So people keep their savings with them and they want to invest it in their future. So that is said to be a liquidity trap. Okay, so lots and lots of theories have been already given on this, but the major and important famous theories in it are the classical theory and the Keynes theory. So I'll be telling what are the major differences between both the theories. So classical theory was given by Adam Smith and David Ricardo, and Keynes theory, it was just an extension of the classical theory when they thought that yes, this is not working in the current scenario for any country's economy. So they extended it in later years, and that was given by John Maynard Keynes. So what was the first difference? The difference was the classical theory always said that the market is perfect. So that means whenever you are going to have some disbalance in the market, it can self-sustain it. But Keynes said that it is not perfect and there is no possibility that always you can self-sustain the market. You may be having some external interventions which are required to sustain the market. The second difference was the government spending is not a major market force. So as per the classical theory, they said that if the government is going to intervene in between, it can also have a detrimental effect on it. But Keynes said that it is important and it has actually a big influence on the demand. The third difference was that supply, as much supply is there, it is going to create the demands. But Keynes said that the demand cannot be created only by supply, but it actually is depending upon the consumer's income. As much as consumer's income, it is obviously going to stimulate the demand. The next difference was, this is a very important difference, that classical always thought that whenever we are talking for employment, all people are employed. It's a full employment assumption. But in the case of Keynes, they said that you can have a possibility of less than full employment. So the classical theory got very, very popularized at the time of industrialization, when the industrialization started. But later on, in 1929 to 30, when the whole world felt a great depression, then this Keynes theory came into picture. The difference in respect to the rate of interest was also interesting. So, as per classical theory, the rate of interest can rise and fall to any extent. But Keynes theory said that it should have a liquidity trap. So, that means whenever for example, the rate of interest is falling, it falls to a certain limit, but it cannot go beyond that. Okay. And the last and important difference, these are few of the differences. There may be many more differences in between both the theories. The last and very important difference is, they said that it can have a state of equilibrium. It can have a state of equilibrium only at full employment. But Keynes said that there can be less employment, but yes, you can still achieve a state of equilibrium by any kind of interventions in it. So these were the basic differences between classical and Keynes theory for it. Now, another theory which was a major outcome of Keynes theory, which he extended the classical theory, was liquidity preference theory. So, liquidity preference theory, as you can see, that we are talking about something cash. So, as per classical theory, that people can have only two motives according to which they can have a liquid amount, liquidity preference. And what are the two motives? The first motive is transaction motive, and the other motive is precautionary motive. So whenever we are talking for transaction motive, so transaction motive are basically when you prefer to have liquid amount or cash with you for your basic transactions, and this is actually depending upon the income. So if you are having a constant income, you are going to have the transactions in that sense, and it also depends upon how much is your income. The higher the income you are going to have, the more money you are supposed to have, the more demand you will be having, you will be starting increasing your spending as per that. So that is one of the motive for liquidity preference. The second motive was precautionary motive. So precautionary motive, as you can understand from the line itself, that whenever you can have a social unexpected problem in case of any emergency, so you always prefer that you should have some cash at your home so that you can deal with those situations in case of any kind of emergency. So these are the two motives which classical theory told. But Keynes said that along with this, there can be another motive, and that is called as your speculative motive. So, what's a speculative motive? In this, people want to retain the cash amount which they are supposed to have. So, they don't want to invest it, they keep it with them, they wait for the interest rate to get down, and then they start investing. You can have various examples of bond prices. We just check that when the rate of interest reduces, and then we try to invest in it. So this is another speculative motive where you think that yes, in the future, or you predict that yes, this can be the possibilities, and you keep the liquid amount with you to invest it in the future. So this was a speculative motive as per the Keynes theory. Okay, so now this is an important model, an economic model, which was given back in 1936 in Econometric Society session in New College, Oxford. So the name of the model is Investment, Saving, Liquidity Preference, Money Supply Model. So we also call it in short form an ISLM model. So what is an ISLM model? Actually, both the IS and the LM curves, they have an opposing force in it. And the intersection of them actually gives you a state of equilibrium. Okay, I'll show you by a graph. If you can see here that this is a graph in between the output and the rate of interest. So IS is going downward, and they both are having an opposing force, and they generate a state of equilibria at a particular rate of interest. So that is this. Okay, so we say it that it is actually an intersection of a real sector, which I just defined in the last to last slide, as well as the monetary sector. So whenever a general equilibrium established between a real sector and a monetary sector, then only we can talk about a state of equilibria in it. Now let us understand what is an IS curve and what is an LM curve in it. So first I'll be explaining you what is an IS curve. So as you can see the left graph, this is between a saving, investment and rate of interest curve. So this particular line is for the investment. So we are saying that as the rate of interest reduces, so we are going to have the maximum investment in it. That's what it's showing. And if it's increasing, we want to keep the amount with this. So that is the savings. Okay, so as soon as there is an intersection in between them, for example, at E naught, so that is considered as a state of equilibria at a particular rate of interest, R1. Okay, now this line which I'm talking about, we are assuming that, for example, the national income is around 5,000 billion in this. Just an example. So for that, this is a state of interest, a state of equilibria. Now, if there, because of any kind of interventions, the national income increases from 5,000 billion to 6,000 billion or maybe more. So obviously this curve is going to be shifted. So as soon as it gets shifted, you emerge with a new state of equilibria, that is E1. So interestingly, the new state of equilibria which you get, that is at a lower rate of interest. So you can see here from R1, it has shifted to R2. Now to plot an IS curve, we are going to plot the output with respect to the rate of interest for each set of equilibrium point. So you can see here that for different rate of interest, you are going to have a different state of equilibria. And as soon as you're going to join those points, that is going to give you an IS curve. That is an investment saving curve. You can also project an aggregate demand out of it. So whenever I'm talking for aggregate demand out of it, so for example, this is a trend which we are having. So for 5,000 billion national income, you can see that the demand rate is lower because it is at a higher rate of interest. And as soon the rate of interest reduces, which you can see here, then the aggregate demand increases in it. So this is a very important application of IS curve, that whenever the rate of interest reduces, obviously the demands increases in it. But whenever some kind of interventions comes, for example, a pandemic comes or any kind of a drought, a flood, any kind of national calamities, when it comes into picture, there always comes some of the shifting of these all curves. So now we'll be studying that how this curve shifts. Okay, there is always a shifting in the curve. So you can see here the left graph, which is for the shifting of the curve to the left hand side, and the right graph is the shifting of the curve to the right side. So when you are saying that the national income is reducing, obviously at that time the curve is going to shift to the left. So when it shifts to the left, if you are increasing the taxes, so that is one of the aspects. When the government wants to shrink the economy, so what it will be doing, it will be increasing the taxes. As soon as it increases the taxes, the curve shifts to the left. But whenever I'm talking for the right hand side curve, so you can see if the government wants to increase the economy, boom the economy, so it is going to put on more and more money in it, and it will automatically shift the curve to the right. So this is the meaning of shifting of the IS curve. Okay, there are many various reasons also for the shifting of curve. You can see here, if the government starts purchasing, you can have a shift to the right. When foreign demands for domestic products increases, you can see a current scenario for COVID, when the vaccinations like Covishield is in a huge demand in the different countries. So if you are going to have a demand for your vaccines from the outside countries, so obviously the curve is going to shift to the right. Okay. And in the same way, you can also have, when you are talking for shifting of curve to the left, if that is, if you're not willing to spend something, you want to always keep things with yourself. So that is also a reason for shifting of the curve to the left hand side. So this is all about IS curve. Then comes the LM curve. So LM, as I told, that is a liquidity money supply curve. So if it's a liquidity money supply curve, so money supply is an important aspect in it. So if you can see the left side curve, so in this, there is a constant money supply from the government. Okay, this is a constant money supply for the government for any national income, for example, Y. So you can see here that the state of equilibria is E at a rate of interest R. So now if I'm saying that the government increases the money supply, okay, or if I'm saying in this scenario that if the national income increases, so if this is the national income which increases, obviously there are going to be a shift and you are going to get a new state of equilibria for a higher rate of interest. So again, you are going to plot it with the income, the rate of interest, and the state of equilibrium. When you join it, you are going to get an LM curve for different rate of interest. But again, there is a possibility in LM curve for their shifting. So you can see the shifting of the curve, something like this. So you can see here that this was the curve earlier. Now, as soon the money supply by the government increases, so obviously this money supply increases to the right. So you are going to have a new set of equilibria. And the new set of equilibria, if you can see here, this is E0 dash and this is E dash. But interestingly, again, both of them are at a lower rate of interest. Earlier, which was R0, that's R1, it's R is R2. So that means this is going to definitely shift the LM curve to the RHS, which can be seen here, LM dash. So that means what? That means whenever we are talking for money supply and we are increasing the money supply by the government, obviously the LM curve is going to be shifted to the right. So this is the whole understanding of ISLM curve, which was, it's a very popular model. Now let us see that how, I'll take a very small example in this by which you can understand that how the shifting of the curves can be done in the case of a coronavirus outbreak. Okay, so one of the important thing which you know, that there is a supply shock to the world economy. Why there is a supply shock? Obviously all the companies, the factories have been shut down. Okay, and that is the reason because of which it is going to have a very detrimental effect on these all things. And what was the detrimental effect? There was a very bad effect on the global supply chain. And because of that, there has been a demand driven slump. Okay, so now what we will be trying to project, we will be trying to see that what has happened to the aggregate demand with respect to the productivity as well as with respect to the employment. Okay, so aggregate demand is depending upon both the things, employment and productivity, but how they are positively dependent on it. As is the faster productivity, then it is going to boost the agents, and that is also including the spending of the money. And this obviously gives you a positive relationship between the productivity as well as the employment. So let's see graphically that how it is done. For example, if I'm imagining that the economy is initially at a full employment, we are assuming that everybody is employed. So everybody is employed. So this is L bar, which is the full employment, and this G dash is G is the productivity for it. Okay, so you are supposed to have this in the initial time. Now, suppose the coronavirus epidemic causes a persistent drop in the productivity growth. Obviously, it happened. Why? Because of the all shutdowns of the factories and all. So G has reduced to G dash. So as soon G has reduced to G dash, the full employment also reduced. So you are going to have a reduced employment, and that is called as an involuntary unemployment. So what is an involuntary employment? That is an employment where a person wants to get employed, but he's willing, but at a minimum wage also, but he's not able to get the employment. You can have various reasons for it. You can see the current scenario in India also in 2020 when we were having a major lockdown. So many of the people, especially those who had migrated to NCR regions and the metro regions, and they went back to their hometown. So that was only that they were willing for working, but there was no employment at that time. So now what can be done so that again we can come to a scenario in spite of having a lower productivity, but we can go for a full employment. Okay, so I'll be just showing you that. So you can see, suppose the central bank reacts by lowering the policy rate. So as soon the central bank reacts by lowering the policy rate, so obviously there will be shifting of the curve to the right. Okay, there can be various reasons because of this: borrowing, spending, and the others. So the demand is going to be obviously increased. So you can see here that AD curve shifts to the right, that is AD dash. So that means if the monetary stimulus, if it's very, very strong, then you can come up to a situation, then you can sustain the full employment again. You can restore it again, even if you are having less productivity. So that's what it has been shown here. That means, and this you are having it at G dash, but you can still go for a full employment. So that is one of the aspect by which definitely the government can come into picture. So that is why the central bank should be responding, and it should be having an easing monitoring policies so that we can have a full employment again. So this is one of the aspect by which we can come up with the shifting of the curves. Obviously, this is only which I have discussed for aggregate demand. You can have many more on this, and this is a emerging topic, and lots of literatures are there. We are still digging into it, and I hope it may be helpful for many of the students who are listening right now. Now I'm talking for the next thing, that is how the pandemic is impacting on the GDP. So I'll be trying to correlate it with some of the relevant and previous examples in context to vaccination and GDP. But before that, we should know that how they are connected to each other. As we all know that impact of pandemic, whenever we are talking about, so the reason can be mortality. Okay, so people are not going for the work because either they are because of the mortality. The second is because of their health condition. There are lots and lots of employees having absentees on presentees concern. There was a time that people were fearing to go to their jobs because of panic. And the fourth, which is lockdown, where they want to go but they are not allowed to go over there. So these can be some of the reasons, but obviously these mitigations are important. If we think it in terms of our health, it's important. But if we are going to see the GDP in those sense, what are the side effects? Obviously, whenever these all things are taken care of, the in any kind of pandemic, there is a drop in the labor supply, that is for sure. Then the labor productivity, that is also for sure, and that is going to directly impact the economic GDP. So, as everybody says, it's a good saying that good health is a good business. So, that is all about it. Okay, now whenever I'm talking for benefits of vaccination in economic growth, so there are various reasons when I'm saying that it helps in the economic growth. So, in benefits and economic evaluation of vaccination, we can talk for healthcare cost savings, we can talk about outcome related productive gains, we can talk about behavioral related productive gains. So, there are various reasons for it. Okay, some of the very convincing results from previous literatures are, one of the result you can talk about polio vaccination. So as per this paper, they have cited that the net benefit of 60 years of investment in polio vaccine was sixfold higher, approximately 180 billion, that the cost during the time when the treatment cost was there. So you can see a evident reference that yes, it is going to help in the increase of GDP. Another context was there. It was around the government in Netherlands, where they actually the government returned on investment for immunizing adults aged 50 against many of the diseases like diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, influenza, pneumonia, and all these diseases. And by considering how investments in immunization influence ongoing tax revenues to the government. So based on that, they said that the investment cost of vaccinated adults aged 50, vaccination yield a benefit cost of 4.09, which is fourfold return for the government. So that is again a convincing important result for it. Then I'm again quoting another example, that is for influenza in UK. So I'll be showing it to you by one of the graph which they have quoted in it. So what were the outcomes out of it? The first outcome was the cost related to influenza alone ranged from between 0.5 to 1% of the GDP for high fatality scenarios, and large still for an extreme pandemic scenario also. The next word, it was shown that the vaccination with the pre-pandemic vaccine could save from 0.13 to 2.3% of the GDP over a single year. Okay, so you can see this graph. I hope it's visible to you all. So this is a graph we are incorporating the clinical attack rate in this and the fatality rate. So the what is the clinical attack rate? It's a percentage of an at-risk population that contract the disease during a specified time interval. Fatality rate is the proportion of deaths from a certain disease compared to the total number of people diagnosed with the disease. So what we have done, what has been done by this and these authors, they have uh, taken the scenarios and they have plotted for low, medium, and high clinical attack rate. So whenever they are talking for low, 25%, they are saying that they are infectious, 35% and 50%. And similarly, they are talking for low, high, and extreme fatality rates, that is 0.4%, 2.5%, and 10%. So these are the fatality rate. So now if you can see it very carefully from the graph, I'll be just discussing for the high, if you can understand that. So this is a graph between the percentage loss to the baseline GDP. So if I'm talking even for the high, when you are having high clinical attack rate, you can see when there was disease only, what is a percentage loss in the GDP. In fact, when you went for a school closure, then also you had not a uh, significant contribution in reducing the loss. Okay, so that means still you are supposed to have a big loss in the GDP. And same goes for when you are having a pre-pandemic vaccine. So the majority of loss could be helped out was only through vaccinated by first dose, that is this light blue if you can check, and the last is vaccinated by two dose in this. Okay, so some of the things or the outcomes, I'm just explaining it here. So you can see here the school closure has very less impact, and that in low fatality scenarios with an additional impact of 0.75 to 0.8% of GDP. A pre-pandemic vaccine would be insufficient to avoid the transition point, and so would reduce the impact on a gross GDP by only 0.33 to 0.64%. And then a matched vaccine, even if a single dose is given to you, so that is going to result in saving of 2.6 to 3.2% of GDP. And the last is when we are talking for two dose, so it is going to save around 3 to 4% of GDP in this. So it's a very important finding which is totally applicable in the scenario for now when we are having COVID. So then these are few of the data which we try to see for double dose of vaccination and how it is showing, how it is affecting the GDP for 23 countries maybe. So you can see here. So I'll be just showing you by this uh, graph. So you can see here maximum vaccinated population contributes to the GDP. So you can have the higher GDP in those cases, except for a very few countries. The majority of the countries showed the same correlation. So these are the things which we should always take care of whenever we are developing. So this is a very important economic growth model. I will not go in detail for it because I have already exceeded the time. So this is an economic growth model which we are talking about. So I'll be just giving a suggestive model, the way we can develop and augment the models. Since it's a theme is in many of the abstracts which I saw for epidemic models, I'll just give a suggestive model that how we can augment both the models. So this is a Solos economic growth model, where K is a capital stock. This S is your rate at which the savings are performed, and this is a function which is a Cobb-Douglas function. So not going in detail to that Cobb-Douglas function, but this in and delta is your depreciation rate in this. So you can have various kind of functions in this. So this is a where the function looks like this. This A is a technological progress. So what is it? It increases with time and it actually affects the level as per the technology keeps on increasing. Okay, so this is just a very basic suggestive epidemic economic model. So all of you have aware of this SIR model. So how we can augment it with an economic solos growth model? As we all know that in current scenario, those people are only allowed either in a government sector or in a private sector to come to their office if they are fully vaccinated. So that means whenever we are talking for contribution to the economy or the capital stock, only the susceptibles and the recovereds can contribute in it. Infecteds can never contribute to the capital stock. Either they are not allowed to come to their offices or they are home quarantine or any kind of clinical issues. So these models can be extended to a very different levels in it. So this is just an example for it. So a flowchart where we always talk about health. If it's a good health, you're talking for education, you're talking for labor supply, you're talking for labor productivity, investment, savings, and then only you're going to get an economic output out of it. So the conclusion is the health and economy shares a bi-directional relationship, with health being a key factor for the promotion of economic. And the vaccine industry and the vaccine programs targeted at population of different age can contribute substantially to economic growth by keeping people healthy throughout their lives with continuous investment in research development to protect population against an increasing number of existing or any kind of preventable diseases. And there is a clear need for commitment to vaccination, not only from health authorities but also from the government. In particular, the finance ministers and the treasuries of different governments need to assess how best vaccination can and vaccination strategies can effectively cover the whole population so that we can talk about a future economic growth in it. So this is one of our paper which got published in 2020 when the pandemic did not start. It is related to an ISLM model where we talked about a comparative analysis of linear and nonlinear business cycle model. So it was a lengthy paper, so I could not add it over here. So you can have a look on this. These are few of the references, and these are the scholars who are working with me on this particular area. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sudeepa. Dr. Anuj, you can quickly share your comments. I think Anuj sir is traveling. So I have a quick question, madam, by the time the power picks up. So in the model, have you done the stability analysis, which we usually do in the
Yes.
last couple of slides? So
Yes.
in the standard way, you can drive the system to a specific stable state and keep it fixed
Yes, we
over.
can do. I could not share it because it's in under review paper, so I did not share it. But yes, we can definitely do. And this is one of the model which I was talking about. But there are various other models which you can definitely incorporate. This is Solo's model. There are Solo Swan model. There are many other models.
And also
And
driving in a finite time, is it possible? We say in a special step, it takes as t tends to infinity, we reach the steady state. So is there a
yes.
way you drive it in the finite time because we are trying to model the
So you
economy in a
can go by
finite
the
time?
same theory of stability analysis which you're talking about for t tends to infinity. You can reach to those points. Definitely, the same theory can be applied to this.
Because of late there's an optimal control theory where
Mhm.
actually we can drive the system in a finite time. Like
Yeah,
as you
yeah.
said, t tends to infinity, it's an infinite time. So,
Mhm.
so maybe that can also be looked in because we are modeling a real time situation.
Yes. So we are still exploring on it because
Yes,
it's a relevant topic. So I'm still reading some of the literature. So yes, definitely that can be a
yeah,
good
because it's
suggestion.
really
Yes.
interesting to me also. So I thought maybe later on we can have a dialogue
Yeah, yeah. Sure,
of
sure,
the
sure.
conference. Then we can.
Yes,
Dr.
yes,
Anuj, are you
definitely.
there? Are you there? So I think Dr. Anuj's internet connection is a little bad
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's
Okay.
traveling. So thank you, madam,
Okay.
for joining us. So since we are
Okay.
running
Okay.
short of time,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
nice
yeah.
to
Sure,
have
sure. Okay.
Anuj has
I'm
come. Dr.
serious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Anuj.
Well,
Dr. Anuj,
very
you have.
quickly, sorry, I'm outside actually, and my internet connection may not be very good. Amazing presentation, Dr. Sudeepa Ghosh. Thank you for accepting our invitation
Thank you, sir.
and giving an incredible talk. I mean, this is very key topic nowadays. Yesterday there was in the panel discussion, Dr. Kavita Kachu.
Yes, I heard. Yeah.
She's a health economist. She did mention
Economics.
these aspects,
Yeah.
yeah, some of those aspects.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you talked about there's always a trade-off. There's always a trade-off that you were talking in your talk. Helping countries and
Looks like we lost Dr. Anuj
Yes, yes,
because of the
yes.
travel.
Network, yeah,
So,
yeah, 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 sure. Yeah.
so thank you, madam.
Okay, okay, sir.
Thank you. It's
So,
pleasure having your talk. It's an honor to have you with us for the conference.
okay, sir.
On to
Thank you.
Dr. Avadesh for introducing the next speaker. Thank you, madam, once again.
Okay, sir.
Our next speaker is Mr. Sathya Mudgunda. Mr. Sathya Mudgunda is a senior tech actuarial consultant with more than 30 years of consulting in actuarial and tech domains in USA and India. With a wide skill set, managed in numerous multi-million dollar international assignments for major insurance companies across the globe. He is a visiting faculty of at Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Prashanti Nilayam. He has several international journal research publication and book chapters at his credit in the field of actuarial data science and has presented in many international conferences. His area of current research is in healthcare. With this brief introduction, I would like to hand over this session to Mr. Satyasai Mudgunda sir. Over to sir.
Om Sri Sai Ram, offering my prayerful salutations at the feet of Bhagavan Sri Sat Sai Baba. So, good morning to all who are present today, my fellow presenters, colleagues, students, and my dear friends. So, today's topic is a study of correlation between pre and post COVID-19 claims using CAN models. So this is applied to Ayushman Bharat. This is the world's largest group health insurance scheme. So here I provide actually like there are some keywords which I'll explain. The abstract is submitted as part of the conference is available with you. Just here some keywords which I thought of bringing up. First one is the CANN, we are using combined actuarial neural networks. Then we are using on GLM on COVID, pre-COVID and COVID. And we are applying on the Ayushman Bharat, which is the world's largest health insurance scheme. So these three things actually will explain as we move forward. So I divided this entire presentation in 5 sections. The first section, it talks about current landscape, pre-COVID scenario. Then why it is unique from the point of view of actuarial and data science. Then what is the actuarial modeling? Okay. Then assessing fraud during COVID-19, how we do that. Then work in progress, what exactly is going on from our end. So these are the 5 sections we have. So the background of Ayushman Bharat is it started in 2018, and it covers 500 million members with annual budget of 900 million US dollars. So it has various pilots which are underway to extend from the current 550 million members to missing middle group of people. which I'll be explaining as we move forward. Then COVID-19 has brought adversity to this particular scheme also. So that's where actually the entire research is going on now, finding out how COVID-19 is impacting the Ayushman Bharat scheme and how fraud is actually changing, because that is another aspect of it. Because our ultimate aim is to detect the fraud, and then this fraud is going up during the COVID-19 time. That's what actually one of the research papers we published recently. There's a correlation between number of COVID-19 cases and fraudulent claims in Ayushman Bharat. So which we can extend beyond Ayushman Bharat, because it's a big size health insurance group. So as part of this, because there's a lot of modeling, because it's a huge data involved in this. So that's where actually data science related tools are being used. And from the statistical techniques point of view, we are using GLMs, extreme value, ruin theory, credibility theories, etc., both integrated together. Okay, and then we are actually from the data AI models point of view, we are using clustering, boosting, classification, neural networks. So this is the combination we are having as part of this research. So just to give a brief background of Ayushman Bharat, because this is a prerequisite for understanding this presentation. So is a scheme structure. We have this is a group health insurance scheme which covers 5 lakh floater. Floater means the family is covered. Within the family, total put together 5 lakh rupees is covered. This is again, anyone in the family may utilize that, but the cap is 5 lakh. Then there is no limitation on number of members in the family. Family may have only 2 husband and wife, or parents covered, or the children covered, but there is no cap on that. Then key stakeholders, their National Health Authority of India, State Health Authority, families covered, hospitals, insurers, TPS, third-party administrators. So here what we are talking about is it's a combination of many key stakeholders are involved in this. So the potential fraud is very high from any stakeholder. So when we are observing actually the fraudulent cases, we look at actually all the stakeholders and how it transpires finally into the claim. So it operates in 3 modes. The trust means actually the state government owns the health insurance subject in India. So they run the entire thing without any contract to insurance or any other person. Then the second mode of operation is insurance mode, where actually state government contracts with the insurance company, and insurance company manages this scheme. Third one is the hybrid, where actually some part of the scheme is managed by the state government in trust mode, another part is by insurance. So there's a combination of actually these 2 things in the hybrid mode. Then contribution is primarily made by state government, and central government also shares into that in a agreed ratio. So currently, who are covered under this? This is covered for below poverty line, and also certain categories of people who are classified to be eligible to become members of the Ayushman Bharat scheme. So those groups of people are actually covered. So there they don't pay any contribution, but the state government is taking care. But there is a plan to extend this to a group of people who are not covered under this government declared categories. So that actually I'll be explaining as part of the missing middle discussion. Then package rate and structure. If you look at that, there's a second block. Tertiary care with 2,500 plus procedures and surgeries are covered here. So this is a hospitalization. Tertiary care means, so it is not primary care. So the part of the one should be hospitalized to get covered under Ayushman Bharat at this point of time, but it is planning to extend actually to primary care very soon. Then categorized, these covers are categorized into 24 specialties. Specialties mean like pediatrics, cancer, so then digestive disorders, like that. Actually, each of those categories are covered. Then pre-authorization is required. It includes all costs associated with the treatment. Then additional incentives for hospitals are given if they are actually managing it more efficiently. Then there are certain clauses. Key clauses are like expense clause. It cannot go more than 10% of the total expenditure. The loss cap clause is there. Then if the loss is more than 85%, then there is a method actually where the insurance company owns that, and if they reinsure, insurance company shares that loss. But beyond a certain percentage of loss, that's called loss ratio, total claims divided by the total earned premium, or the for a year if you are taking total claims for that year and total premium paid for that year. If that exceeds a percentage, let's say actually more than 135%, that means actually the government will share 50% of it. So it's a fine-tuned scheme, very effective in the country, and there are many hospitals which are empaneled, like it's a huge number. Then there's a portability of the scheme. A person need not be in the same state to get the treatment. They can move around and still get the treatment from where they are, and then it gets charged to the appropriate state. Then claim investigation, settlement, there are procedures in place for that. And then fraud prevention measures are there, which is a rule-based engine which works within the Ayushman Bharat scheme. So if you look at the numbers, 50 crore plus covered in population in India, 1.5 crore claims are paid till date. 50% it adds to the insurance penetration in India. That's why actually it's so huge. Then 24,334 as of last month, and now actually they are more than that now. So these many hospitals are empaneled with this scheme, and then it operates in trust mode. 21 states operate in trust mode, insurance 7, and hybrid 4 states operate. So this is a pan-India scheme. So if you look at further, actually like the health expenditure in India, see, if you focus on this particular thing, out of pocket is actually 68.1%. Then government, it actually covers 28.2. 3.6 is by insurance. So you can see the opportunity available for insurance companies, opportunity for government to expand the scheme, and because the out of pocket is actually the money is going from the person who is actually getting the treatment. So that can be actually reduced by going either with a government way or by insurance way. So this is the statistics actually which is giving us good indication. Now, if you go further, see who is covered and who is not covered. If you see Ayushman Bharat and other types of government schemes, they are covering 700 to 770 million out of 1,370 million population of India, so approximately. Okay, so what is like the not covered situation is 600 to 670 million. So in that, if you take a cut of above middle class, that is 80 to 100 million. So middle class of 520 million to 570 million is actually not covered. That is called missing middle from our point of view. Okay, so this is the growth opportunity for covering people in India. So then, which is taken up by either by government or by insurance companies. But government is doing a lot. That's where actually this scheme is a successful scheme. So now, looking at this scheme, what is the unique thing about Ayushman Bharat? Because this is the application for us, because we are applying pre and post COVID actuarial models to identify fraud detection scenarios. Whether it is different, what is the correlation, what is the quantification of that. So now from the point of view of why it is unique, so here we have large data. So you have seen how many people are covered. So 50 crore is a huge amount. So normal modeling tools of Excel and other things, they won't be sufficient. So we should be handling big data analytics on that. Then complexity in calculation is another one. Then stakeholder conflict management, because there are multiple stakeholders involved in this. So that is another major aspect here. Then state specific special features are there. Though the scheme is given at the national level, there are state specific, each state can have their own unique features. So that also comes into play. So these are the four major things. So large data we tackle using ML and DL tools and techniques. So here, if you see the data, each state-specific data is maintained for the purpose of experience or pricing purposes. Then data pre-processing happens, data collection, data cleaning, and preliminary data analysis. We have descriptive statistics, data visualization, predictive modeling, corrective action or prevention, post-intervention, then pre-post comparison, results, and deployment. So there is a monitoring aspect continuously which is happening here, which gives the feedback into this. So from the actuarial and statistical tools, we use credibility theory, extreme value theory, ruin theory, and GLMs as part of this data handling scenario here. Then data science point of view, we use clustering, boosting, classification, then neural networks, distributed computing, high performance computing. So these are the tools and techniques we use as part of tackling the large data using for the Ayushman Bharat. Now, complexity in calculation, it is done in various ways, actually, like a slice and dice method. So when the portfolio of data is here, we actually split it by calendar month, then district or calendar month, then eligibility category, district, and calendar month. So we increase the complexity by each of the additional lines into that. So package, we add to the previous one. Then again, packages are many packages are there in this. So they bring in again further classification of that. Then we add age and then gender, package, eligibility category, district, and calendar path. So these are the various aspects of looking at this data and then making them into homogeneous groups. And then from there, actually, we analyze and then make a conclusion on that. So pain points are to do such calculations, traditional Excel-based models are inadequate. Then sheer size of the portfolio, even if you take the smallest test group, it is in lakhs and lakhs of like millions of records are there. Then homogeneity in the portfolio across the states, that states are provinces actually if you compare with other countries. So inherent volatility of experience across states, and then impact of fraud. So these are the various pain points we have actually while doing this complexity in calculations. Then from the data sources, we have actually Ayushman Bharat official website, then tender documents, and then for our research purposes, we actually obtained some more data specifically from certain customers. So stakeholders, we have actually a lot of people in this involved in this, families covered, insurers, insurance brokers, National Digital Health, NHA, the National Health Authority, State Health Authority, the insurers, hospitals, new age tech firms, government, regulators, third-party administrators, and NGOs. So state specific, again, there are certain changes. Target population is changing, packages covered are changing, hospital specialty, because it's not all 24,000 hospitals are covering the same thing. They have various variations in that. Then mode of operation is also varying. So now we go further. So there's the actual modeling, how we are doing here. So this is the pre and post scenario we need to see every time we look at actually the data. So what we expected at the beginning of the year, and then what we see at the end of the year. So we see 5 main things: portfolio claims experience, target population and demographic considerations, package rate analysis, risk management effectiveness, hospital availability and utilization. Under each one of these things, we have listed actually claim trends, early claims, reopened claims, analysis, package dependencies, medical expenses outside Ayushman Bharat, fraudulent claims in that way. So each one of these things are subdivided so that actually the experience under each of these sub bullet points is studied, and then we make based on the whatever study we undertake in the previous one. They all get into the descriptive analytics, diagnostic analytics, predictive analytics, and prescriptive analytics. So what needs to be done is the prescriptive one. So we arrive at that using these 4 stages. So now when you look at the data analysis available, so count of families by eligible category, then district wise, because each state is district wise split, so that is another thing. Then specialty wise information, because there are 24 specialties we have identified. Count of top 100 procedures, because we don't need to do analysis for all the things, because most top 100 takes care of actually the 95% of the thing. Then top 100 hospitals. Again, I listed what are the actuarial statistical tools and data science tools we used. So basically exploratory data analysis, data imputation, actual versus expected analysis is what actually we use here. Then on the data science side, actually, so if you want to have a visualization, the R Shiny is actually predominantly we used as part of our research. Now, this is a model, actually actuarial model. This is a frequency severity model we call. Based on that, we arrived at expected claims. So using this, because here actually we have data assumptions, the model, frequency and severity, then based on using that, computation of expected claims is arrived, and there are other considerations to take into consideration. Now if you go forward, this is the flow chart, which actually you can keep it as a reference for our purpose for the next few slides. So here we are doing frequency and severity. Base frequency and severity is arrived at first. Then we adjust that for member count, for exposed period, and IBNR. IBNR is incurred but not reported claims. So adjust for claims for seasonality, adjust for impact of hospital empanelment. So these are the things which are done from the frequency. Then there are 2 more: adjust for change in packages, adjust for change in private public hospital mix. Because hospitals, though there are 24,000, they are split, they are government hospital as well as private hospitals. Different types of treatments are given in different places. So, and also the package costs vary by the type of hospital. So similarly, severity also we have the adjust claim amount by for IBNR, that is incurred but not reported claims, is like a reserve. Now they adjust for claims seasonality, adjust for changes in private public hospital mix, adjust for change in packages. So frequency is probability of claim happening. Severity is when it happens, how much it is. Okay. So again, we have used from the actuarial point of view, predominantly I listed what all we looked at. But directly, if you say identify the like a burning cost approach is the chain ladder method, Bonhoeffer-Ferguson method, Cape Cod. So these are the methods which we use for IBNR and the futuristic claims expectation. So moving forward, so the same flow I am picking up one by one. Adjust member count for exposed period and IBNR. So these are the 3 actuarial methods, and then these are the 4 data science methods we used for frequency and severity. So level 2, so this is a level 1, and then if you go further, how we made this particular thing. So here again further split is there, adjust member count for exposed period, and then earnings for latest month. So same is the thing, actually adjust claims for, again for the severity also, assessment, portable versus normal claims. Then we arrive for the past IBNR trend and future IBNR trend, minimum, average, and maximum. So this is an example of that. The outcome of that particular analysis is, so exposed families and families covered, then claim count, claim severity. So these are the, this is the claim count graph. So this is how actually you can see, and then severity from point of view, and then frequency. This is a combined thing. So frequency is going around 8%, okay, and severity is about 10 to 12,000. So this is the box which the final outcome of it. Minimum 5%, maximum 10%. Average is here. So average is the point actually which you can say for frequency and severity, and that gives us actually the expected claims outgo for this particular calculation. So same is the situation for claim seasonality. So here again we use time series, extreme value theory, exposure based methods, change in mix of claims type, Gaussian to Pareto. You know, those are the things which we use here. Then we, based on this, again, level 2 of that is actually calendar month wise and trends in the past and then trends projected into future for both the frequency and severity. Then this is the outcome of our calculations. Okay, so here the frequency has, it moved from 7% to 8%, the previous calculation, because we added another adjustment here. And then the total risk premium, that is actually total expected outgo, is 823 per family. That is the average which we are arriving at. Then moving forward, then hospital empanelment, number of hospitals, when they increase, the more claims actually will come up for the approval, because the availability of hospitals actually changes the claims outgo. So here again, you can look at actually the level 2 diagram here, past empanelment trends and empanelments into future. So how they are moving, and then how many beds are available in the hospital, and then how actually claims expected per hospital is changing into the future. So this again, everything we arrive minimum, average, and maximum, and then you see it is improving. The premium is going up actually after making this adjustment, though the frequency is remaining same, the severity has gone up. So now going forward, just for private public hospital mix, again, the scenario testing, sensitivity testing, and stress testing is what we used here. So level 2 diagram of this, if you see more closely, current mix is giving us some numbers, then experience of private and public hospitals, and then future mix is actually what we are calculating. And then from there, we arrive at what is the minimum and maximum average of this particular thing. So this is the outcome of our research for the private public hospital. So here you see actually past it was 70-30%, and future we are seeing actually 60-40% between public and private. So if you look at the average now, it is actually moving to 10% of the frequency, and then risk premium has gone up to 1038. So this is again, each adjustment is actually increasing the cost of the total claims which are covered here. So if you go further, then change in packages, because there are certain changes which are happening within the scheme. There are certain changes which are actually there specific to each state. Again, we use scenario, sensitivity, and stress testing to arrive at actually what is the adjustment we need to make for the changes in these packages, both for frequency and severity. In level 2, if you see actually what packages were consumed more, past package consumption analysis we do, difference in packages, and then future package consumption we arrive at. So here again, these are the top 10 procedures we have taken, and then from there actually claim amount and claim count, how it is actually current scenario, how it is appearing, and then how it is going to change. So claim amount wise, you see knee replacement, PTCA, and surgical some packages, hemodialysis, these are all the top ones. And then if you see from the number point of view, you see actually hemodialysis considered as the topmost procedure from the count. So then again, making adjustment here. So we are looking at actually the frequency to be 10% and severity to be 12%. So please remember the model is frequency severity model. So putting all the adjustments together, the base, just for claims seasonality, just for impact of hospital empanelment, private public hospital, and then the package changes. So it is coming to each one, we have lower, average, and upper, and at the end of this actually you are arriving at the premium. So you see the premium to be anywhere ranging from 1000 to 1800 depending on which one you choose. Okay, so other considerations are there: enrollment changes, emerging experience, other government schemes experience, okay, experience from retail health insurance products, change in loss sharing clause, target population changes, fraud detection, portability. So these are the additional things which impact our model. So again, from the actuarial point of view, extreme value theory, anomaly detection, ruin theory, credibility theory, and time series is what we use. And then data science wise, actually we used SMOT, MW mode, TGAN, ADASIN for data imbalance methods for where actually for fraud detection part of it. So we used boosting, and then various other data science tools and techniques we used. So impact of COVID is actually the one which we thought of actually bringing up here. So ours is pre and post COVID-19 scenario. So additional difficulties in investigation, online mode of operation, many methods of fraud detection rely on aggregate data from past. So again, the new type of frauds are happening. So our challenges are changes in package consumption patterns because of the COVID, upcoming period impact, because that is actually changing how the future consumption is changing. Then packages for COVID-19, because there are new packages which got added. Scope of claims investigation, because which is predominantly not a physical investigation. So again, we use the frequency severity model, trends before and during COVID-19, future trends we projected, and then we used actually time series, HIRD model, SIR model, Wilkie model, which is specific to actuarial thing, scenario modeling, return period approach. So these are the things we used. Then data science packages are like Selenium, Beautiful Soup, then are Shiny predominantly for the purpose of visualization we used. So going forward, like this is the impact we could see because of the COVID-19. So it's actually the frequency is rising, though severity has not changed, but frequency has gone up during the period. So this is the data set we used. We used for Kaggle data set for COVID-19 data. And for claims data, we used a specific state of India, where 3.8 lakh records were there, 51 features and 12% fraudulent cases were there. So this is the outcome of our research. Then you see actually as number of cases are going up, the fraud percentage is also going up. So this is the correlation. We already published this particular paper. Now this current research, we are actually identifying the quantified how much it is. Actually number of cases are fine, but the total amount that gets impacted actually. So here we used Markov models, time series, and Coppola models for our purpose from the actuarial side. These are the descriptive statistics. The correlation part, actually you can see fraud percentage is 0.8626 actually. So we conclude as COVID cases have been going up, the fraud rate also has been going up. So these are the results again. So linear regression and logarithmic regression, and you can see the residual plot here. So which actually explains it is perfectly correlated, and then our conclusions are actually properly interpretable here. So here the interpretation of our results by industry experts. So highly suspicious change in the package utilization pattern and highest utilized packages. These are the three things actually you see in the data here. So based on that, actually, like we did industry experts validation of our results, and the interpretation turned out to be very close to what we found from the data science point of view, actual data science point of view. So we are actually very optimistic of actually moving forward with this particular research of identifying the quantified amount of loss due to COVID-19. So this is a work in progress. So obtained post-COVID data on claims labeled with fraudulent instances, then using the CAN model to assess the impact on fraud post-COVID-19 claims. So this is the model which we are planning to use for the future. This is now we are actually embedding the GLM model nested into network approach to come up with a classical generalized linear model. So where we see the GLM part of it coming in the last layer and giving us the output layer impacted with both the neural network and the GLM added to that. Okay, so this is the one actually we are working on. So any questions from your end? I'm actually ready to take. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with your knowledge related to actuarial science and data science. Now, our next speaker is Professor V.V. Ratish Kumar. Professor V.V. Ratish Kumar has done his PhD from Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning, Prashanthi Nilayam. He is currently working as a senior professor in the Department of Mathematics and Statistics, IIT Kanpur. His research interests include parallel computing, numerical methods for PD, computational fluid dynamics, finite element analysis, and computational biomechanics, porous media, and image processing. With this brief introduction, I would like to hand over this session to Professor B.V. Ratish Kumar. Over to sir. Sir, please unmute yourself.
Am I visible? Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My slides are in the full screen mode.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Om Shri Sai Ram, pronouns the lotus feet of our dear Lord Bhagwan, Sri Sathya Sai Baba. At the very outset, I am extremely thankful to the organizers, Professor Vamsi, Professor Anuj, and the head of the department, Professor Raghunath Sharma, and the co-organizer, Professor Pallav, for giving me this opportunity to be the part of this event. I'm extremely thankful to Dr. Avdesh for the nice and crisp introduction. So without losing much time, let me get into the discussion of this topic. So far you have been listening to a number of very interesting talks by different experts on different aspects. We will be now looking at an aspect which probably most of the a little different from what others have been addressing. So in this talk, I will be focusing on modeling and simulation of potential indoor airborne transmission of SARS-CoV-2. So this is at a level where an individuals can get infected because of close proximity, which we all know and we have been taking care. But this is an investigation which gives proof that how this can happen. So as I said, as the title goes, it's a modeling and simulation. We are going to highlight on the way the various modeling elements and the way the simulation has been taken place, and finally come to the conclusions. So the outline of the talk is we will begin with an introduction, and we will have a look at a glance at state-of-art studies. The very recent studies. We'll also go back to other influenza, but also we'll look at what has happened in the last couple of years, especially in this particular context. What has happened, we will look at only in the context of modeling and simulation in the indoor context. Then after having looked at, naturally we need to see, we need to address the motivation for this particular investigation which we have carried out at IIT Kanpur. I will give that scenario and the motivation for that work which we have carried out, and need to keep drive home the point. I need to portray before you the geometrical setup which we have designed to the realistic situation. So I will just get into the details of that. After having geometrical description of the setup, we will go into the mathematical model. As we know, the mathematical model always not exist, especially in this setup. There are some generic models. We need to fine-tune the generic models to our context, and we did do that, and that's going to be computationally very intensive. So we need to have numerical methods for that, like state-of-art numerical methods for finite elements or finite volumes. We need to have, and I will also highlight those details in a very brief way. Then we will quickly get into the simulation outcomes with some discussion and some quick conclusions. So that's in a nutshell the outline of this talk. So let's get into the quick introduction into the problem. Firstly, let's look at the scenario of potential indoor airborne infection. Let me start off with a standard cartoon, which many of us would have seen this cartoon in several different places, either in the newspapers or in the research papers or in textbooks. So this is a scenario. What you're seeing is uh, here is a person who is coughing. It is in a closed environment. There's a room. That's why you see a door here, and there's a window, possible ventilation. There is a small kid standing here, and the person enters here, and the door is closed. He's coughing, and because of that, the respiratory droplets or the saliva is ejected from his mouth, and it is traveling. As we see that the droplets are going to be saliva that is ejected from the mouth can be of different sizes. Some of them can be very large, which you see as red chunks, and there are small ones of various sizes. So there are some of them are falling out quite close to the person who is coughing, and some of it is being carried by the airflow inside and also by the pressure with which they are being ejected. So there are several mechanisms by which this is the internal airflow and inherent force with which it has been ejected. They're all the traveling advecting mechanisms for them for to travel from this person who has actually ejected it to the other persons in the neighborhood and also fill the whole room with that. This is a standard cartoon, and this is where the focus is going to be like. So this may be a cartoon, but it talks of the reality, and it becomes that's a serious matter, and that's why a lot of precautionary measures have been taken and have been announced by WHO and at various places we follow, like distance maintaining, washing hands, and they all now become more significant when we go along. So these are the large droplets with viral content. If this person is infected, or then we know that's going to be quite not quite risky. So large droplets with a viral content deposit close to him to the emission point, and the smaller ones may travel forward. And these smaller ones are the risky ones, which can reach people in the neighborhood. And the larger ones also are risky, not that they're not risky. The residence time, the evaporation time, and by the time someone touches it, we know that the viral infection the person can be virally infected. So this is a very important, I would say, I will now not call it as a cartoon, but an important scenario which probably tells that we should not take these kind of things lightly. And that's why a lot of precautionary measures have been announced and we are following them. So now we will investigate these various things in our talk, in the realistic scenario. So now, before to convince ourselves that what will be the scenarios in the terms of coughing, what happens to the airborne droplet transmission in the neighborhood. So let's look at what has happened recently, the work carried by Talib and Dimitris. Just look at, let's again imagine a scenario. There is a room where there is, we will, for all practical purposes, let's say it's a still room. There isn't any AC and the windows are not open. So more or less it is a ambient still scenario. In this scenario, let's say a person enters. Talib and Dimitris have done an experiment. This is an experimental data which I'm projecting it. So a person here enters and then he's coughing. As he coughs, what happens? The ejection from his mouth, for the first 1 second, the distance that see, the person height is also important, and roughly is about average height of the person is something like 1.63 meters. So he's coughing, and the first 1 second that it travels the distance of the ejection from his mouth, the respiratory droplets, that's traveled a distance of 1 meter, 1.1 meter, 1.01 meters. As it is traveling, there are several other players in the role. The gravity effect is there. There's also the evaporation which can take place, especially now here the gravity is highlighted. The gravity as it coughs, these saliva droplets are now descending downwards. So over a period of 5 seconds from the time he has started coughing, they have now, some of it has settled down, some of it are yet settled down. And over a period of 10 seconds, you look that at least more than 50% has settled down. And over a period of 15 seconds, it has settled down. As they are settling down, as you see that because of the diffusion mechanism, they are also moving away from the person. and it has spread a little bit, maybe more than a meter. So initially, as it coughs, it's about 1.01 meters. Subsequently, over 15 seconds time, it has the distance, it has reached almost the ground, but it is still, some of it is in the air, suspended in the air, and some of it is settled down on the floor. Now let's see what happens as the time progresses. In about 20 seconds time, now still it is slowly coming down, and then the spread of the saliva droplets over the floor, it is slowly, it is gradually spreading it out. Gradually, as you move from 20 seconds to 25 seconds, 40 seconds, and 49 seconds, nearly over a minute's time. So the spread, if you were to take gradually, the smaller particles and the big particles are going to naturally settle down close to him. The smaller ones are traversing a little further because of the force with which they are being ejected. They travel a little faster because of that mass gravity effect is less. They move, almost some of the small particles are found as long as 2 meters. So all this is a scenario which has been typically simulated. Experiment has been carried out by Talib and Dimitrius in 2020 in a nearly still room. They do not stop there, they go further, and then they carry forward the experiment. What happens if there is circulation, wind circulation in the room? So let's say that there is going to be wind circulation. The speed of the wind is about 4 kilometers per hour from the 4 kilometers per hour from the in the direction. It is, let's say, it is blowing in the direction from behind the person, and there's circulation. Now you see. Now again, let's say the person enters the room and the room is otherwise closed, but there's a circulation. Circulation speed is about 4 kilometers per hour, and again coughs. In 1 second time, it has traveled some distance, and it is about 2 meters in 1 second time. In about 2 seconds time, it has reached about 2 seconds, and it is also 2 meters distance, and it is also not reached the floor yet. In the previous scenario, as you noticed, in 2 seconds time, the whole thing has nearly settled on. Whereas in this case, when there is a wind circulation, it has traveled already 2 meters within a couple of seconds, and still the big chunk is in the air, and there is no dispersion also not taken place. And you also look at the dispersion pattern. With the smaller heavy particles are settling down, whether the lighter particles have traveled here. Whereas in this case, the heavy particles and lighter particles are still together. The cluster of these particles have not dispersed yet. Over a period of time, as you see over the 5 seconds, the typical spherical cluster which has been spit out by the person slowly elongates in different patterns. Actually, this pattern itself is going to be quite complex, but this Dimitrius then, so I will not focus on this pattern right away. But it is all very complex as it is moving away from the person because of this wind circulation. They're also getting diffused into the whole atmosphere. As you see now, this is the case over a period of 5 seconds. The distance that these particles travel is about 66 meters. So if the room is about 15 meters or 10 meters room, typically more than half the room has been spread. This is again the subject which has been considered as an experimental subject. Again, his height is about 1.63 meters here. So this could also differ from the height, and we will come to that point in a little while. Now, let's say we increase the speed of the internal circulation. So maybe there's an AC, there's a suction mechanism, etc. is present in the room. Now, with the extra circulation speed inside the room, what Dimitri observed is that the flow of the particles now is going to be 6 meters within 1.6 seconds. So this is over 5 seconds time. This has reached something like 6 meters, whereas here 1.6 second time it has reached 6 meters. At the same time, the particle diffusion is also taking place. The spread out is also happening. Whereas in this case, when the circulation, internal circulation is only 4 kilometers per hour, then the circulation, while this is still flowing as a chunk, while it is getting traversed or transported, it's also getting diffused and filling the room. So over a period of 5 seconds, more or less the whole room will be full. Now over 6 meters is going to be already filled. This could be typically compared to the mass flow rates of the air conditioner, based on which the different speed adjustments can be done. The fan speed adjustments, it could be something of this order. Then we see that in no time the whole room will be filled. Now, this is a very important scenario. What happens if this person is either infected person, or let's say is in the he is infected but he doesn't know he's under the incubation period, then still it is dangerous. Then it could be quite risky for the room if this is going to be the rate at which the whole saliva droplets or respiratory droplets are going to spread out and fill the room. So now this becomes a very important. Now, what if this happens? Is it going to be only for? Then very many questions come up now. Now, will this be the really scenario if multiple people are there, or if the room is more humid, if the temperature of the room is little different from the experimental conditions from what Dimitri has done? So there are a number of scenarios and the conditions which need to be explored. Yes, consider a typical room of size of, let's say, 10 meters. What happens if the room size is small? What happens if there is no proper ventilations in the room? So these are all the scenarios, because these are all the scenarios which typically need to be taken care in the working environments, in the offices, in the school, in the hospital setups, in the classrooms, in the conference halls. These are all the very important things which need to be taken care even in the post-COVID period. That's where this work becomes very important. Now, further caution which we need to take into account is the work half-life period of the variable viruses, because we are saying that these are the respiratory droplets, which possibly if this is an infected person and these are carrying the viruses. Now, what happens to these viruses which are being carried by these droplets? So there we need to worry about the half-life period of these viruses. So obviously this virus, SARS-CoV-2 virus, we need to worry especially about it. Now, in a room, we can have varieties of materials. For example, like we can have a copper, we can have a plastic material, we can have wooden material, we can have aerosols and various kinds of things. So the period, the lifespan of these viruses, this especially SARS-CoV-2 virus, is very important, because we know how long. That's why disinfectation is very important of the rooms. So now let's look at get an idea from the work of Van Dormel. Let's say the half-life span of the SARS-CoV-2 compared to SARS-CoV-1, the aerosols, it is about, what you see is a half-life in terms of the hours. It is roughly about more than 2 hours, roughly about 2.5 hours. So this is also true for, they have observed first for SARS-CoV-1, and then subsequently SARS-CoV-2 also they need to look, because this looks significant, this also looks equally significant in the aerosols. Let's say the other things. Let's say there is a copper material in the room where this person has coughed. Now, some amount of his sputum has got settled on a copper material. Let's say, what is the half-life period? Now, we see the half-life period in the case of SARS-CoV-1 was something like more than 2 hours, whereas in the case of SARS-CoV-2 is less than 2 hours. It's about 1.5 hours. Now, let's look at cardboard. The cardboard is typically found in the rooms. And if some of these droplets are settled down on the cardboards, then lifespan of this is more than 4 hours. It's roughly about 5 hours. So it's what is being seen here is the typical black dot is the typical time plus minus. It goes up to, it could be anywhere between 1.5 hours to 4.5 hours, typically around spread around 3 hours. That's what is actually this whole red block over this black dot is depicting. The same thing is true even here. So now let's say we have another surface, stainless steel, which is typically found in the rooms. Now you see the time span, half lifetime span of SARS-CoV-2 and SARS-CoV-1 in this context is roughly spread up 5 hours to 6.5 hours, 4.5 hours. It's spreading between 4.5 hours to 1.5 hours. The same thing is this was observed in the case of SARS-CoV-1, and that's why they did this for stainless steel material. Let's look at the plastic. Plastic is also largely present in various places in all the rooms. And then these are the lifespans. So why this is important? The person comes and coughs, and okay, it is spread out in a particular time span, but these things are very much present in the rooms on different surfaces. Now here the question comes, this experiment as carried out by Dorman Lin is in certain conditions. For example, the temperature, humidity, the airflow conditions of the room. So typically under those conditions, these are all the values. This could slightly differ depending upon the scenario in which we are placed. But then this gives us an insight that it is very much resident time depends on the evaporation rates, so on and so forth, small drops, big droplets, several factors like that, and then surfaces on which they fall. Therefore, it's very, very important to understand how far they go, what are all the things which have been spread out, on which this sputum which are the surfaces on which this sputum can really settle down. So resident time and half-life time does give an importance that this need to be really addressed in a very serious way. So let's look at these two being very important works of 2020s. Lots of work has been carried out on various fronts. Before we get into the details of our particular work, let me also give you some glimpses into some of the important works related to airborne transmission. Example, in 2020, the airborne transmission of SARS-CoV-2 is very, very important, has been highlighted by the work of Lilian Junjikau in 2020, and again, the similar kind of an effort has been made also by the Feinberg, who says that the airborne travel should not be overlooked, because this need to be addressed, because this has not been very seriously taken. Airborne 1 meter distance or 6 meter distance, this is good enough as a precautionary measure. It was felt, and but it was not very seriously taken beyond that factor. So people started investigating and showing some evidences. So I need to show some evidences here in terms of this literature, and also bring in some of the literature which is debating against this. So we also have the work of Murakowska, which goes back to 2006 in a different context of how the large virus containing droplets expired by an infected person land on the surfaces. This has been an experiment which has been carried out by Murakova, and he highlighted the importance. Subsequently, in 2028, as I've just shown you the work of Van Dorleman, which I've given you the snapshots from that work, and the effect of the gravity and convective forces which is existing in the given room on smaller and the bigger droplets was investigated. Murakova, Lee, and yet a series of works in a hospital scenario has been carried out by, especially in terms of ejection of the drops, the travel and the dispersion of these drops. This has been addressed in the context of SARS-CoV-1 virus by Lee, Yu, Zia. These are three different groups. So I will just put them together. These are all three different experimental studies carried out in different contexts. Aircraft studies have been carried out in a context of airborne spread of influenza by Oslin in a realistic plane context. In 2003, healthcare facilities in Toronto, way back in 2005, in a different context, again, airborne transmission was taken seriously and addressed. And March in 2003, they have looked at Norwalk-like virus spread among the school children. So subsequently, Herb in 2012 addressed the influenza H5N1 virus among the ferrets. Ferrets is something like cats, which are domestic, and then the spread of the influenza because the airborne. This also has been experimentally investigated. Indoor airborne infection was addressed to some extent WHO in 2009 studies, but in the case of COVID-2, SARS-CoV-2, not so much of significant announcements have been made. That's why a lot of people have made a lot of requests to WHO to make this a significant precautionary thing to be announced. So again, the airborne transmission of COVID-2, this has been in the context of crowded areas. We have Quan, Hong, and Liang. These are three different groups, especially in the crowded areas, carried out experiments and gathered the data to address its significance. One of the reports of CDC, Center for Disease Control in USA, that report has put off WHO in a way. They say that the airborne transmission over longer distances, such as from one patient to another, one patient room to another room, another patient room in the context of a hospital, has not been documented and is thought not to occur. So this has been considered, significance has been slightly lowered because of the CDC report by WHO. That's where the intensive research has taken place by different researchers. So large airborne infection in a choir. You have a musical choirs taking place even during the infection period, and large airborne infection has taken place in that. That analysis has also become an evidence of this. This is an experimental study again, and Ong in 2020 again carried out in hospital-based studies. And Chia et al. This is again a group of people who carried out studies, experimental studies, especially polymerase chain reaction test evidence, PCR test evidence for the presence of airborne SARS-CoV-2. These are a set of works carried out by several different groups here. But there is also a work of Ong 2020 who did not find SARS-CoV-2 virus. There are also a couple of works. This is one particular work which seemed to report it negatively, but more than 95% of the works reported it positively. So I et al. In 2020 again did a mechanistic airborne transmission modeling. We also have the specialist agents who work on heating, ventilation, and AC studies, especially in the American and the European context, for done experimental studies on various conditions in the room and airborne transfer of SARS-CoV-2. So this is again in the crowded areas and poorly ventilated rooms by Nishiura again highlighted its significance. So I would say that these are only just a handful of these studies. There were several experimental studies, and there were also few numerical simulations. Ours in particular is a numerical simulation, which we are going to show in a couple of minutes. Now, all this goes to show that airborne transmission in indoor context is a potential danger which need to be addressed very seriously, while other things are being taken as serious. Attention is being paid to all other things. This has been underscored to quite a large extent. Now, having said all these things, this motivates us to explore the potential indoor transmission of severely acute respiratory syndrome COVID-2 virus. So, understanding the post-COVID meeting scenario and engineering control tools. When I'm talking of controls here, I'm going to talk of practical controls, not from the control theory point of view, but of course it can be translated. But engineering controls, in a very brief way, I will highlight it. Indoor safety based on understanding the spread of viruses through respiratory droplets. Now, let me come straight into the other scenario. So, typically, as you understand that we are going to address an indoor scenario, it is a continuum model, it's a macro model, and you're going to see that, of course, it's going to be based on partial differential equations, but it is completely going to talk about an indoor scenario. So, firstly, we need to get a clear picture about the geometrical modeling of the scenario. So, we have considered a conference room indoor scenario. There are very many reasons, because a lot of executives who were attending conferences during this for various business reasons and administrative reasons became victims. Despite the fact that they were wearing masks, they became victims. And there are also instances in our own domain where people who were in the conference rooms with all the protective measures ended up as victims. Of course, many of them recovered, but the reason for this, we thought we should realistically consider this model. So we have created a model entirely by our own visualization, and that's where this is a typical conference room which we are considering in our discussion. This is in this case study, what you see here is a top view of the geometrical setting of a conference room. So we have a 10-seater, 8-seater plus 2 of the serving helpers who are serving some tea to these people. That's a typical conference setting in a typical room. So now we are have about, even in this case, we need to, because we are going to get in the realistic 3D scenario, we need to exactly model the things. We need to get into a realistic model. I don't say exactly, sorry, that's a wrong word. We need to give a realistic scenario, so we need to go work with some realistic dimensions. So we consider the average height of the persons to be of the 1.73 meters, and we went to the typical room dimensions of 10.2 meters, 6 meters, and 6 meters diameters. This is typically a conference room size. A small average size conference room. It may not be a very big auditorium. One can also simulate for auditorium, but this is a typical simple conference room, where 10-seater conference room with a YouTube round table of this kind, and table dimensions are considered to be realistic. All this, we took it realistically, these dimensions, so that whatever conclusions we get in terms of the droplet transmission and deposition, would serve some precautionary measures in a realistic context. Now let's look at this is the top view, which is the visualization, but we need to really convert into a realistic model for computations. So we have to go into the CAD model. This is a CAD model which in-house we have designed it using Autodesk Fusion 360 software. This is designed by Saurabh, who is in my team. So he has designed this realistic model with all these realistic measures, which typically exist in a typical conference room in our setup. So we have this, and the average height of this person is taken to be of this, and accordingly, the body structure and the heights are accordingly as per this height. So we have taken typical measurements. I will not get into the details because even developing this model took a lot of time. And here, what we see is typical air conditioners. The dimensions of the air conditioners are true to the size. We have taken the dimensions as per the dimensions of the commercial ones which are fitted there. We exactly took all the things, the dimensions, the carpet size, the height of the people, the tray size, more or less the hand, leg, head, mouth. These are all the typically very important things. But there are very many things where we approximated because it becomes very, very difficult to handle, but we try to go as close as to the reality. Now let's get a view of this three-dimensional view of the entire room layout. So this is important for us because when we are going to go for a realistic 3D simulation, we need to look at all the subtleties, and we also made a lot of approximations in the not that we have covered entire reality to its fullest extent, but there are good number of reality has been captured, but there are good many approximations also. That's why this 3D layout is being portrayed before you. This has again been simulated by Saurabh. He has done an excellent job in this, I think. Now let me take you to that's about the geometrical modeling in a very nutshell. Let's get into the mathematical modeling. So we need to model various things. We need to model the airflow. We need to model the saliva droplets. We need to model the transport, air transfer, and saliva droplet transfer, and the various gases which are present. So we need to make certain assumptions, but these are not assumptions. These are the experimental measures that we have taken. So typical room temperature is going to be something like 25 degrees centigrade, and exhaled air, when a person exhales air, typically it's around the body temperature. We assume that it's 37 degrees centigrade, and composition of the room air and the exhaled air. The room air is having this oxygen, nitrogen, major gases like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, water vapor, and argon. These are typically considered in all these scenarios, and the percentage of these things is 20%, 0.4. This is all picked up from the typical experimental measured setups. Exhaled air, these percentages which are actually up again from the typical experimental setup, the measured oxygen exhaled. In the exhaled air, the percentage of the oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, water vapor, argon, etc. These are all the realistic values which we have picked up, and the molar masses of the corresponding things these are the realistic values. These are from the experimental data. Now these things are going to be, these gases are not going to be present. There's going to be a mixture of these things, so we need to employ a mixture model. So mixture densities is calculated by this is the molar density of the mixture. The density of the whole thing is consisting of the molar masses of the mixture of all these gases and ambient pressure and gas constant in the as per the setup in the room, and ambient temperature. The universal gas constant that has been used is this. And the mixture masses is calculated based on the masses, percentage of the masses that I have shown in this slide here. We consider these realistic values and we use these mixture masses. So we tailor this formula to use these mixture masses, molar, in terms of all these molar mass concentrations that we have here. These molar masses have been used for calculating this M cap here. So in fact, what I want to highlight is we have employed here the realistic values as available using the data in the literatures, current literatures from experiments, experimental setups. So now when it comes to the viscosity of the sputum viscosity, we have used the dynamic viscosity, which we have computed using one of the very popular Sutherland's formula. The Sutherland's formula is the dynamic viscosity is calculated in this fashion, where the reference temperature, that's the temperature of the room, that the Sutherland's, this is called the Sutherland temperature. So this is a standard formula which is used for calculating the dynamic viscosity, because we are going to model the momentum, mass conservation, momentum conservation, where the viscosities of the air, viscosity of the sputum, everything comes into the picture there. So these are the reference temperatures which we again pick up from the database. And we need to model the individuals. We need to model his face, mouth, face mask, so on and so forth. So the typical model which I have shown that here in our model setup, our model had a typical head dimension which tallies for a person of the height of 1.73 meters. We took the typical head size, and the mouth, the size of the mouth is typically, opening of this mouth is taken to be something like 40 millimeters, and we here approximated this depth of the mouth to be 40 millimeters, so that some sputum particles can be put. So we need to eject the particles. So we have considered some particles, we fill that with some particles, we eject it out, and typical opening of the lips, it can be more or less, we took it as 16 mm, it can vary. So that dynamic variation, as one is speaking, that we will show subsequently, and an average, the opening aperture of the mouth is about 16 mm, as you see here. This is without the mask. The same thing we have also experimented. We put a mask on his face, and we have also experimented this case. So this designing these things is not
Sir, I'm sorry to trouble you, sir. Sir, if possible, can you humbly request you to wind up in 5 minutes, sir?
In 5 minutes? I think I
10.
started late. All right, I think I will do that. So I think having Vamsi requested me, I think I will not be able to get into the details. Let me get into, so we have, I will not discuss the details. I will show you the equations and straight away come to the conclusions. So what you see here is now geometrical modeling, we get into the mathematical modeling. So mathematical modeling, we need to have here the mask to be modeled. So we have went for the realistic model based on the realistic material, etc. But then here we use a porous media approximation for this. Not getting into the details, all the constants that we have used from the literature, that they are empirical relations based on realistic coefficients that have been measured for a particular material that has been employed in designing the mask. For example, here, I will not get into the details. I only want to highlight that there's various things which take place in this mask. For example, if you're trying to model a mask, what you need to look at is when the sputum is coming out, some of the sputum can stick to the mask. Some of it can rebound within the mask itself. Some of it can penetrate. These are various effects which we need to really model and take into account. Boundary conditions are going to be very dynamic in this case. We have modeled each one of the subtleties in a very detailed way. Now we do not have time to get into all the details. And now the sputum, how do we, the particles have different sizes. When you say the small particles and large particles, so we take the particle distribution measured by the experimental, provided by the experimental data of Sathya, and we have actually taken that the experimental data of Sathya, we have put in a curve using Rosen-Rambler function, and we took this distribution of all the particles. So in our experiment, we have particles of all sizes as projected by this experiment. Now, the model, typically in a conference scenario, a person can be normally breathing, a person can be breathing, or he can be simply talking. So the mass flow rates in a normal breathing case is going to be something a sinusoidal, and if he's going to be coughing, then there is going to be mass flow rate is going to be sudden ups and downs is going to be there, and if he's going to be speaking, then we are going to have a mass flow fluctuations of this kind. So this scenario is not existing when we have to actually take the realistic data to fit in to get some approximate representation of these things. We go there approximate, they are realistic. So all these things, that means the mass flow rates are dynamically changing. We are not working with the static mass flow rates. With the realistic values, we fit in the curves. So some amount of approximation takes place here, but then these are realistic mass flow rates. Now here, let's get into straight away the actual model. The model that we have, this is what the top view of the model that I have shown already there. Now, let me give you, I think I don't have time to talk about these things. These are very important modeling which we have incorporated. What you see here is a person starts talking. There are several persons sitting here. So we simulate a scenario, person 1 talks first, then the next person 8 talks, person 7 talks, person 6 coughs. So we have a pattern in which it happens just for simulation, and it could be simulated for any random pattern. So in this case, what we see here is a person is talking, it is recorded mass flow rate fluctuates in this way. It is coughing, mass flow rate fluctuates. This is over a period of long time. over 20 seconds or over 1 hour or 2 hours. Here I'm showing typically a 60-second scenario. Here in about 60 seconds, he talks here and he coughs after 30 seconds. The second person talks in about 10 seconds. He coughs first, he talks, then the third person is coughing, and then he speaks around 40 seconds later. The fourth person, he coughs here and then he talks. And so the coughing and talking scenario is taking place for these 10 persons in different over a period of 120 seconds. We have taken a different complexions for different persons. This is these mass flow rates are considered based on experimental data. So we have simulated variation in the mass flow rates. So this is a model. So firstly, we assume this, we mathematically model all these things and then put it into a model. I will not be able to get into details. So the simulation parameters, as far as the airflow is concerned, we use a turbulent flow model. That's the RANS model. Then we use a Piso algorithm for calculating. To close the RANS turbulence model, we use a K omega turbulent transport model, because the RANS model, as you will see immediately, this is a RANS model. What we see is a turbulent viscosity. To calculate the turbulent viscosity, we have to couple it with the so-called K omega model. K omega turbulent model is used for handling this in a realistic way based on the realistic data. We get this because this is defined, actually the turbulent viscosity, kinematic coefficient of viscosity is based on kinetic energy and the dissipation rates. So these dissipation rates are calculated using the realistic data here, and that's the model. So firstly, we have the RANS model. RANS model is coupled with the turbulent flow model here. We need to couple this, and this is about the Piso algorithm is used here. So I will not get into the Piso algorithm for the details. I'll just skip it. There are some algorithmic details. There's no time. Let's get into the, then for the droplet simulation, we use a Lagrangian method. So we both have Alerian method and Lagrangian method. We use discrete element method for the transport, for tracking the transport of the particles in a Lagrangian framework. So I will make only that comment. I will not get into the details of any of these methodologies. What you'll see here is, I will stop in a couple of minutes. So what you see is a typical scenario, a discrete representation of the entire room. So the models that we have considered, they're also discretely represented. Solid models are discretely represented. Entire room is now discretized, and the discrete representation of the room. We have the number of the elements here. The discrete elements is something of the order of 10 to the 7. And the air, we have two air conditioners. Typical airflow simulation, and the room is when before the start of the meeting. This is the air circulation pattern in the room. Two air conditioners are on. That's the air circulation pattern that you see there. And now here we have rooms. We have carried out simulation with mask, without mask. I don't think I will be in a position to show you the simulation. You see when they are talking, the way the droplets are being ejected and the distance they travel, the way they settle down, residence time, evaporation of these things. So that's without mask. Next, we come to the same scenario. We simulate it with mask. Now, what happens is the droplets are also being ejected. They're getting leaked out in spite of this mask because of the assumption that we make on the mask. But the distances they travel is less. They are settling down on the surfaces. Now, I don't think there are a lot of things to say here. I do not have time to describe all the dynamics here. I just give you the snapshots. So from the simulation that I've shown you, we have zoomed up the pictures of individuals of some of the, so this is at some instance, what you see here when a person is speaking, sputum that has come out of him, some of it, the gravity effect is going down, and some of it because of the thermal conduction effect is conducted upwards. Now, in this case, what you see in the case of the mask, some of it is settling down close to him, but that's the main thing that you see here. And when is the breathing, that's the breathing animations that you have here in both the cases. We have the breathing as in the absence of mask, both the conduct is being conducted up, and also some of it due to the gravity effect is falling down. Here in the presence of this mask, most of it is falling down, and the convection up is very, very minimized. So now here in the case of talking, that was a natural breathing. In the case of the talking, the sputum that comes out is ejected out of the mouth. You see the droplets of different sizes are coming out, and they traverse different distances based on various mechanisms. Not get it. So in the at 25 seconds, that's the scenario. At 30 seconds, that's the scenario. Next, you see what is the scenario as the people are talking with mask. That's without mask. This is with mask. I will not get into the coughing scenario, the zoom up of the coughing scenario. So this is This is without mask, and this is with mask. Now we will see the coughing. I will skip the coughing animations. Now I'll show you a couple of snapshots before I end. This is typically when the person is about to cough, because of the thermal convection, some of the droplets, because of the breathing that has been carrying upward, that upward arrow says that the convection upwards, and a lot of it is traveling in all the 360 directions here. Now when he coughs with the ejection force, thermal convection which is traversing upwards are decreased majorly. Most of it is falling in front of him. Now it is settled down on the surface. As you see that over a period of time, it settles down on the surface. Now settling down on the surface, there are a lot of other things which probably I will not be able to say. The dynamics, as several people are involved, there is an interaction of these particles, and we have need to consider the residence time and evaporation and different materials which are present in the room. So essentially what I wanted to highlight here is there are so many things which are happening here. Like there's this sputum, the respiratory droplets, once they settle down, it's not that it is finished, they are still active. The active viruses can be present if any of these people are infected or in the incubation period. So one last point before I conclude, there are some standard engineering controls which is called as a traditional control pyramid. One is called as the elimination. Elimination is the most effective one. Physically remove the pathogen. That if that happens, nothing to do, nothing like that. So that's the best thing, but that's something which is beyond our control right now. The other engineering control is to separate the people and the pathogens. It is exactly here that I am addressing. Right? There are so many other controls. We will not get into that. The most effective one is elimination. The engineering control is all that I said. So typically with this I started with a cartoon and I end up with this cartoon, which typically says that this is some of the engineering mechanisms which need to be fine-tuned. While common sense says that avoiding air circulation, use of circulation damper, use of UV germicidal irradiation, air cleaning, disinfection, these are all the common things. But fine-tune these things, you need to carry out realistic simulations. You cannot experiment with the realistic subjects, so we need to carry out virtual simulations like what I have depicted. You need to address these things to come up with the realistic settings. So I think I don't have time to get into the details. With that, I think I just conclude. I leave this cartoon before I conclude. If there are any questions I will address. Thank you very much once again, and sorry if I have overshot my time.
Thank you, sir. Really enriching talk, sir. Due to really lack of time, we will take the questions later on. If any questions are there, I will pass it on to you personally, sir. And very interesting talk, sir. Yes, sir. After the conference, maybe we will have a discussion on that.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. So moving ahead, for the next session, we have Professor Malay Banerjee from IIT Kanpur. Dr. Malay Banerjee got his MSc degree and PhD degree from University of Calcutta in 2005. He is currently a professor in Department of Mathematics and Statistics at IIT Kanpur. His research interests are in the area of mathematical ecology and eco-epidemiology, nonlinear dynamics, pattern formation, and spatio-temporal chaos. For today, Sir has chosen the title of his talk as two group epidemic models of COVID-19 with varying infectivity. Over to Dr. Malay Banerjee. Sir, can you hear us?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Perfect, sir. Perfect.
And screen is completely visible, right? Clearly visible.
Yes, sir. It's loaded. Yes, perfect, sir.
Okay. And how much time should I have?
No, sir. Half an hour. Your full slot, sir. Whatever is given to you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your kind invitation and nice introduction. So first of all, I must mention that it is a little bit easy for us, the people who are talking towards the end of the conference, based upon that is focused on a particular topic, because already participants who are interested and regularly attending all the talks, they are familiar with most of the terms which I'm going to talk about. So just before preparing my slides, I was looking at some of the lectures given by several experts, and also I have attended couple of lectures when I had some time. So based upon that, I have actually focused only to my own words, or rather own works, what we have done. So just to start with, these are the different points. That means little bit of introduction I have to provide. Then several mathematical modeling approaches have been adopted so far for COVID-19 epidemic. And then I will come to the main part of our work, that is two-group epidemic model. This is some sort of behavioral model. And then I'll talk about a little bit on the vaccination model, that is a non-conventional vaccination procedure, what we have actually studied mathematically to provide some input or provide some insight towards the fact that in case of COVID, the standard vaccination procedure might not be that much successful. And although I have written here conclusion, but you can see there is nothing to conclude because so many questions remains unsolved. So we need to keep on working. And finally, I'll come to show you some references. So people are already familiar with these pictures and all these terminologies. So at the beginning of 2020, in March, April, etc., we talked about coronavirus, COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, and then one term comes into the picture while we are talking about mathematical modeling, that is whether we are modeling epidemic disease or a pandemic disease. So what is the difference between these two phrases? I took the liberty of somehow means borrowing the nice explanation given by Amit Chattopadhyay from University of Birmingham, Aston University, that an epidemic having a passport and multiple visas is known as pandemic. So that means once when particular epidemic disease transmitted from one country to another country due to the air travel or some other connecting travel between the countries, that becomes a pandemic. And then lockdown is the one particular measure taken by most of the countries across the globe in order to cut down the peak of the epidemic, which was estimated at an initial time based upon the exponential growth rate. And then social distancing, lockdown, these are quarantine, these are some sort of mechanisms, social mechanisms or social behavior that might help us to reduce the spread of the disease or control up to certain extent the spread of the disease. And sometime we hope that it also minimized the number of death toll caused by this epidemic. And just before my talk, Professor Ratish Kumar talked about this topic elaborately, that is ventilation of the rooms is most important to get rid of some kind of possibility of infection. And nowadays we are concerned about the vaccine. Sometimes people are happy with the vaccine, but what will be the period of effectivity, that is a great challenge. That means whether we need to go for some sort of booster dose or not after having 2 doses of the vaccine. Okay, so this is the picture of the that is picture of the number of infected cases or number of reported cases across the globe on 31st of January 2020. I have taken this picture from this Worldometer website. And what you can see that at that time, we have quite a good number of cases in China, and some other places it is little bit less. But once time proceed, we can see the change in the picture, that number of cases changes drastically on at the end of 30th of June. I'm not saying that it was drastically changed on 30th of June. Rather, I have taken this snapshot from this particular Worldometer site on 30th June to show you some sort of change that is observable when compared to the scenario of 31st January of the same year. Now, if we look at the scenario on 31st December of 2020, that means if you compare the previous one and this one, so there is not much change in the darkness of the countries. There is no certain change. And now if we look at the scenario just up to yesterday, So these two figures more or less same. Why this is so? Because we have to keep in mind that order of scale on which the colors are plotted, that is are in geometric progression. So that's why just looking at these two pictures, one can say, okay, there might be a some sort of endemic situation. But if you look at the individual number of reported cases at different countries, then you can clearly understand the scenario of endemicity might be a far reaching concept for several countries. And one such picture is this one. These are the daily reported cases. This is for UK up to day before yesterday, that means up to 28th of October. This is the daily reported cases in Germany. This is the daily reported cases in France, and then this is the daily reported cases in Russia. So from this picture, what we can understand, that appearance of maximum number of daily infected varies significantly from one country to other country. And why I have chosen these four countries, the quick answer to this is that, for example, Germany and Russia, they are sharing a common border, and there was provision of traveling of people between these two countries before the strictest lockdown restrictions are set into the place. But you can see the number of cases, or that means pattern of disease propagation, is significantly different into two neighboring countries. And if you look at these kind of pictures for different countries, you can understand that disease propagation scenario is significantly different if we consider if we move from one country to other country. So within this limited time, I'll not be able to talk about a multiple scale model, but that is also important. So what I'm trying to say, that suppose you have the daily reported cases in Germany. Now, if you look at the daily reported cases in different provinces within that particular country, so each and every province is not assured to show you similar kind of behavior of the disease propagation. And even if you look at the individual level, so that means much more micro level. So if you look at the density of the population in different metro cities and some sort of rural areas and some village areas, then you can see there is a significant difference in the number of daily reported cases. So what I'm trying to say, that the disease propagation mechanism is not very simple, it is quite complex. But what we can try to do, with the help of some mathematical model, we can try to understand that what are the different factors which is responsible for the up and down of the disease propagation. So there are different type of modeling approaches. This is not the exhaustive list of model, rather it is a very short list of compared to the available mathematical modeling techniques in order to understand the disease propagation. So these are different possible modeling approaches, and of course one can think about combination of any one or two or three of these models in order to have a better understanding of the system dynamics. But in this talk, I will confine myself within the ordinary differential equation model only, except the last slide, just to show you what we are doing right now. But the question is that once we are talking about ordinary differential equation model, then first of all, we need to answer one important question, that ordinary differential equations are based upon the fact that if we know, or if we are able to understand the current scenario correctly, so then whether we will be able to understand, or whether we will be able to predict the future accurately or not. In case of ordinary differential equation model, it assumes that if we know the current situation, then we can actually predict the future accurately. But that is not the actual case for COVID epidemic. So why we are talking about this one? Because this is true for autonomous differential equation. So that means there is no time dependence. But here what we are going to do, we have considered that infectivity, that means the rate of infection, is a variable quantity which actually varies with time. So what are the different available model? These are different type of model considered in a well-known manner in the area of epidemiology. That is SIR model, ACIR model, SLIER model, etc., etc. But in case of COVID, mostly what I have observed that people have considered ACIQHR kind of model. So these are the names of different compartments, although you know these things very confidently. So just for your quick recapitulation, these are the nomenclature of different phrases that is listed here. But unfortunately, I must say in this kind of talk that initial research work in this area, which was reported so far in most of the journals, those are based upon models. Sorry, it should be with, it is not without. So red color was, I just wanted to say that models with demography. So in case of epidemiology, there are two types of model. One is model without demography and another is model with demography. In at the initial stage and still now, as well as till now, I can see there are several papers who have considered the model with demography. There is a benefit of considering model with demography is that we can do some sort of mathematical analysis. But if we look at the basic understanding of the epidemiology, so we can easily convince ourselves that in order to include demography, we need to understand the epidemic more accurately, and some sort of long time data is required to understand the demographic pattern of the spread of the disease. And most of the time, if you consider some sort of model with demography, then it will give you some sort of endemic state. Mathematically, it is useful to perform some stability analysis, etc., bifurcation analysis. But in the context of COVID, I must say that this existence of endemicity and bifurcation, etc., these are far-reaching concept. In this talk, I'll consider model without demography. Of course, there is another aspect that is different in the time scale. So what we have considered a 8 compartment model. So these compartments are susceptible compartment. The exposed compartment, they are divided into two. One is exposed but non-infectious, and second compartment is exposed and infectious, because there is a latency period. So immediately after inhaling the virus within your body, depending upon the immune response or depending upon the amount of viral load present within your body, it will take some time period. This time period is not fixed, rather it varies from one individual to other individual, such that that exposed individual will become infectious. Of course, this understanding was taken from some literature who have studied this phenomena from clinical point of view. Then infected compartment is divided into two. That means symptomatic and asymptomatic. That means individuals having symptom and without symptoms. And then 3 more compartment, that is quarantine compartment, hospitalized compartment, and recovered compartment. So in our model, what we have assumed that this quarantine, the concept of quarantine, comes into the picture after the identification of the infection. So that means once a person is tested to be positive, they are asked to quarantine. Of course, one can ask the question, there are several measures across the globe that people who are traveling from one country to other country, although they have negative reports, they are asked to be quarantined for some time. We must admit, but at a starting point, we have to start from somewhere. So what I'm trying to say here, this was our assumption for the model formulation. Of course, there might be some sort of variant. We cannot claim this is the only suitable model for epidemic progression of COVID. And this is some sort of schematic diagram of the disease progression. And here what we have assumed, that death is possible only from 2 compartments. That means infected who are symptomatic and infected who are hospitalized. And mainly we have fitted this model with data from some European countries only, and in specifically we have given emphasis on the data from Germany, because as per our understanding or news reporting at different media, we understood that they performed a very nice way of testing the people without any lag or without any delay, and their medical response team is quite sufficient, and each of the individuals who were tested positive, they were monitored regularly. And at that time, it was actually the story of April 2020. By that time there was no complaint in social media or in news media that there is a lack of hospital spaces. So assuming that if one symptomatic individual who tested positive and need a hospital bed, they will be able to find an hospital bed and will be treated appropriately. So based upon this assumption, the model looks like this one, and these are the interpretation of different parameters. I am not going into the details. If anyone is interested, they can look at our paper which was published in Mathematical Bioscience and Engineering. And what we have considered the infectivity varies over 3-time interval. One is before the implementation of lockdown, another is during the first couple of days of the lockdown, and then another time interval after a couple of days. In this case for Germany, it was estimated 12 days and onwards. This is another force of infection. And during this time, we have considered three different values of beta T. So there is a controversy, or there might be some sort of discussion can be carried out, that during the lockdown or due to the lockdown, whether the infectivity suddenly drops from a higher value to lower value, or which pattern is it followed to come from an upper level to lower level. So in order to answer this question, we have considered two different situations. One is that it was higher before the implementation of the complete lockdown. It was quite low after the implementation of the lockdown, but not immediately after the lockdown, but rather after certain days. And during this time, it might be at an intermediate level, or it might be slowly declining from higher value to lower value. So one thing I just want to comment here, that this level of infectivity, that means these values of the beta and these time interval, these are actually estimated from data and the model simulation result. So the parameters and this length of the day are considered in such a way that cumulative number of infected matches with the numerical simulation along with estimation of some other parameters. And with this, what we have seen, that for assumption of beta, which was in the left panel, accordingly you can see this kind of matching. Red dots are actually real data, and blue curve is the simulated one. And on the right, you can see the same thing, where we have chosen this beta changes from higher value to lower value through a continuous straight line. But in this case, what we have observed, that towards the end, we have a good fit with the data. And this is the daily reported cases. There is also reasonable amount of match, but there are some disagreement at the initial stage that may be due to wrong estimate of the initial exponential growth rate. And this kind of approach is validated not only for Germany, but for some other countries also. And these are the 95% confidence interval around that data. This is for Italy, this is for Spain, and this is for UK. So now we come to the two-group epidemic model. Two-group epidemic model means we are assuming there is a change in behavior, human behavior, once the lockdown restrictions are withdrawn. So what we have assumed, that one group of people, they will follow the guideline or all, they will follow the restriction, and another group of people, they will not follow all those restrictions. So as a result, there will be a mixing of the individuals from different compartments, and accordingly we might have different rate of transfer of the infection from one individual to other individual. For example, two people without mask, they are interacting face to face over a coffee bar for say 15 minutes or half an hour or couple of hours, or maybe one person having mask, another person don't having mask, or even both the people don't having both the people having mask, there will be different rate of transmissibility. And with that, what we have predicted at the end of June 2020, that suppose with the data which we had for Germany, if 10% of the people does not follow this kind of control measure, that means social distancing, wearing mask, etc., there is a chance in increase in the number of cases. And if it goes to 20%, then it shows a rapid growth in the number of infected cases. And we have reported in our paper that if 20 to 25% people don't follow this protocol, there might be a chance of second wave, and which might be much more higher compared to the first wave. And then by that time, when review report came for this paper, by that time we have some data, and that's why the model is actually fitted with the data from Spain, and it shows a nice agreement with daily infected data that we have for Spain with this kind of thing. And in this case, what we have measured, that the ratio is 27% is not following that kind of protocol. And this model or this mechanism is not only valid for this kind of monotonic growth, rather it is also able to capture non-monotonic growth also. There might be some sort of disagreement that is related to the irregular reporting of the cases. So here dots corresponds to daily raw data, but if you look at the 7 days moving average, it will have much more close approximation, but towards the end of the day you can see good match with the cumulative number of infected cases. In case of vaccination, what we have assumed, it was published in Applied Mathematics later, what we have assumed that, okay, we have two group of people. So this demarcation is not straightforward. There might be different reason. So that means one group having comorbidity, another group having without comorbidity, or it can be considered that one group is super spreader, another group is not belonging to super spreader, and also the assumption that all the required number of vaccines are not available at a time. So after a fixed time interval, we are having a fixed number of vaccine, and then what will be the required policy to distribute the vaccine among two groups such that we can ensure that if there is a possibility of growth of the epidemic, that peak should not be that much high. So what we observed here, that suppose 10% of the people, they don't follow the protocol, or 10% belonging to super spreader, 90% belonging to non super spreader group, then this line actually determines that what number of total vaccine is required. So that means if you consider the equation of this line, V1 plus V2 equal to constant, so any total number of vaccine higher than this one will ensure the slowdown of the epidemic progression. So that means if the number of total vaccinated people is greater than this particular threshold, so there will be R0 less than 1, and in this case R0 greater than 1. But clearly you can see that instead of 10%, if 20% people don't follow this protocol, then we need much more higher number of vaccines, and it will be quite higher in case of 30% people, they don't follow this particular approach. And what we have considered that suppose without any demarcation among the individuals, whether one is super spreader or not, if you randomly vaccinate the people, then it actually follows this particular path. So randomly vaccinated, and there is no preference to the group V1 or V2, and it shows that there is a chance of epidemic growth which is much higher, because this black curve measures along the scale on the right hand side. So maximum peak is coming out to be close to 2500. But for other cases, so for some other strategy, what you can see that we have less number of cases, and the path which is followed by this red dot, if we follow this kind of vaccination approach, then it will give you lowest number of maximum infected if there is a possibility of regrowth of the epidemic. So within this time period, I must stop at here after a few remarks, and these are some other different kind of works what we have done so far. This first one is an editorial on epidemiology. These are some of the research work. Most of them are published except this one with Anuj Mubai and others, that is comparison of different models for epidemic. And last two are some book chapters where we have given some idea about the multi-scale model or what are the challenging issues which is required to be addressed in near future. So finally, conclusion comes into the picture. This is the conclusion, that work in progress. So many work is required to carry out in order to come a appropriate conclusion of this epidemic progression. But interestingly, I just wanted to show that which is the most fascinating work or most fascinating approach we are trying to follow, that is to understand the emergence of multiple strain. So here this is looks like some sort of spatiotemporal model. This is the number of infected individuals. It is although mentioned as space, but this is not truly the space into the picture, into the mathematical model. Rather, what is assumed that the viral strain that is actually changing little bit from one to another, and this is some sort of mathematical model and simulation result. It shows that if we allow the disease to stay within the population, so they might happen for one strain we have a lower peak, but for other strain we have a larger peak, and if it continues in forward time, so there might have some sort of complicated situation. And this is mainly we are interested to model which is called emergence of new strain, which is actually followed by the idea, the same mathematical approach which we have used to model the Darwin diagrams of evolution of the species. That means how new species can emerge, or some of the species can go to extinction. And that kind of approach we are trying to implement in this epidemic model in order to understand the emergence of new strain. Of course, this model has a limitation that we are now discussing, that whether it will be able to conclude that how many new strain will come up, because we don't know what are the actual responsible factor for the emergence of new strain. But literature says if pathogen stays somewhere, because it is evident that pathogen cannot be eradicated completely across the globe, it will remain there. But what we are trying to show, we are just trying to capture the dynamics, that some sort of means unexpected or complex appearance of the new strain, and depending upon the what factor, it might be magnified or somehow it can be controlled, and how the epidemic progression will looks like in multiple scale. So this is some sort of ongoing work with Thomas Lipniaki, Alberto Donofrio, and Vitaly Volpart. And these are some references from these particular links. I have taken most of the data and several information in order to set up the model. And I must refer to this book by Manfredi and Alberto Donofrio, which is a nice one, that is the interplay between human behavior and spread of the infectious disease. And according to my knowledge, or according to my understanding, very few people talked about this aspect, but rather in case of COVID, it is a strong evidence that human behavior is the most responsible factor for the spread and further progression of these epidemic diseases. So I was not that much fascinated to work in the area of epidemiology, But I was talking with Anuj for a long time, if I recall correctly, from 2012 and onward. Several times we have talked about several things, but during COVID, this vitally somehow dragged me in the area of mathematical modeling of epidemic diseases. I have learned a lot, and continuously disturbing Anuj through phone, WhatsApp, Facebook, etc., etc. But whatever work I have presented today, that is carried out with these four people: Vitali Volpart, Swarnali Sharma, my PhD student Shomiran Ghosh, and Anita Sebastian. He was involved in the case of that vaccinated model, which was published in applied mathematics later. And these are the other people with whom I am collaborating. And at the end, this is some sort of my understanding for the term COVID, something positivity, that collaboration, observation, visualization of infectious disease. I can look at COVID in this particular sense. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening talk. It's really interesting, sir, and we'll again go through it in detail, and we would like to surely have a collaboration with you in the future time to come, sir. On behalf of the organizing committee, me and Dr. Anuj Mubai, we thank you once again for the talk, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you, audience, for the interesting being attentive for all the talks. So we'll have a break for 5 minutes time, and for the last talk of this morning session, we'll assemble sharp at 11:40. Thank you. Saida. Vijay Bhagat. Vijay Bhagat.
प्यार का बंधन तुमसे हमारा, प्यार का बंधन तुमसे हमारा, साए तुम ही हो हमारे दिलों की धड़कन, साए तुम ही हो जिनसे खिलाए जीवन, प्यार का बंधन तुमसे हमारा, तुमसे है ये प्यार का बंधन, प्यार का बंधन तुमसे हमारा। We love you, Sai. We love you, Sai. We love you, Lord. जब मिल जाए सागर बन जाता है, बूंदे जब मिल जाए, हाँ मिल जाए, सागर बन जाता है, दिल जब मिल जाए घर बन जाता है, हमें तुमने मिलाया है, अपने पास बुलाया है, बिखरती इस दुनिया को तुमने संवारा है, संवारा है। प्यार का बंधन तुमसे हमारा, तुमसे है ये प्यार का बंधन, प्यार का बंधन तुमसे हमारा। ಸ್ಪರ್ಶತೋ ಮನಸುನ ಪ್ರೇಮ ನಿಂಪಾವು ಬಿರುದುಲದ್ದು పదవులొద్దు మీ ప్రేమ మాకు చాలునే సేద తీర్చే స్వామి ఒడియే మాకు ఎంతో హాయిలే స్వామి we love you sir we love you sir we love you Lord तेरे ही रंग में रंगे हैं अब हम तो तेरे ही कदमों पे चलेंगे अब हम तो हमारा ये जीवन बने संदेश तुम्हारा वादा है तुमसे ये हमारा है प्यार का बंधन तुमसे हमारा तुमसे है प्यार का बंधन तुमसे हमारा we love you sir we love you sir we love you Lord we love you sir we love you sir we love you Lord we love you Lord we love you Lord प्यार का बंधन तुमसे हमारा प्यार का बंधन तुमसे हमारा साए तुम ही हो हमारे
Om Shri Sairam. Welcome to the last talk for today's morning session. So for this talk, we have Dr. Vijay Bhagat from Central Leprosy Teaching Research Training and Research Institute. I would take the liberty now to say that Dr. Vijay Bhagat is more like a friend and an elder brother to me. So we have been interacting almost for 2 years, and we have been working together on lepra reactions and trying to reduce the burden, disease burden for the lepers. So I'm really happy, and also I'm really comfortable introducing sir as he's though I call sir, he's almost like a best friend to me. So and he is so humble that his introduction he has given only a couple of lines. So Dr. Vijay Bhagat has finished his MD and PhD. He is currently the Deputy Director and Head Division of Epidemiology and Statistics, Central Leprosy Teaching and Research Institute, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. He is also a member of National Technical Resource Group, NLEP. So, Dr. Vijay Bhagat will be speaking to us on the topic Medical Evidence Synthesis to Clinical Applications, Learning to COVID-19. Over to Dr. Vijay Bhagat, and we are eagerly looking forward for this session, sir, as it is going to be little different because Dr. Vijay Bhagat is by profession is a medical doctor. So his views on COVID will be different from the regular talks which we have been hearing. So over to Dr. Vijay Bhagat.
Thank you, Dr. Vamsi. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, great. And it is really a pleasure to be your elder brother,
Yes, sir.
and certainly, and it will be a good experience for me also to be with you all. For medical professionals, mathematics is not more than these four signs like plus, minus, division, and multiplication. And especially the medical persons, they are a little bit not much familiar with the advanced statistics and mathematics. But I would like to share that actually my percentage and my interest was good in mathematics before I joined medical. Even my performance was good in mathematics in plus two, but by God's grace, I am here as a medical expert. Uh, Taking forward, I will not take much time, especially with respect to you all are waiting, and it must be little bit maybe a static or some inertia among the, because we are all online and there is not much physical uh, movements and not much mental exchanges, physical exchanges and mental exchanges among us. So maybe please bear with me. Maybe this is the last session, and if I make you little more comfortable, little more what you say, moving you from the topic of mathematics and the numbers, just that I think that would be good success of my this particular session. And I kept the session much informal because this may be a review or maybe an introduction to kind of medical research that we carry out in our health fields. So coming to the main presentation, actually the synthesis of evidence is there in everywhere, in every field, even in arts, even in commerce, even in environmental sciences and everywhere. So especially medical evidence synthesis is very much required for
Sir,
betterment of.
can you make the slides full screen, sir? So it's
Yeah, this is full screen. Can you see full screen? No,
you put it in the slideshow mode, sir. Down the
it is
slideshow
already
button.
slideshow. Shall I stop sharing again? Share.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Better.
Okay, okay. So this is now not in slideshow. Is it now full
You
screen
have
and
not
slide?
shared. You have shared, sir. You have shared the slides. So
I don't.
share. You have to click the share and then go ahead, sir.
Can you see it now?
It's loading, sir. Just a minute. There is a down. There is an icon.
Hello,
We can see that, sir. We can see the
hello.
slides. We
Am I
can see the
audible?
slides. Yes, sir. Yes. So down there
Dr.
is an
Vamsi,
icon.
am I audible?
Yes, sir. Are we audible to you? You are audible, sir.
Hello. The evidence that we should respect is very much required to continue the development of the human race in a proper direction. Otherwise, if we do not pay attention to the experiences, there is very much similarity between experiences and evidence, but there is gross difference that the experiences are very much individually biased, and evidence is a scientifically proven experience with the particular, especially health sciences. The evidences are generated very much stringently and very much with correct and most sound kind of evidence, so that it deals with the human life, and therefore it is really and very much important to see how these kind of evidence are generated. And therefore actually this topic, I am really thankful that this topic was being discussed and being shared with you, that medical evidence synthesis is how it is generated. Actually, synthesis is not, it is going beyond the generation of evidence to testing the evidence and testing it again and reviewing it again, so that it should be most optimally fit to the particular human race. So therefore the term nowadays used is evidence synthesis. Especially, we all know that the clinical evidence or clinical treating the patients has to have a very good clinically sound technology, because it is going to affect a life, maybe a life or a population of people, or maybe race of human beings on this blue planet. So therefore it is very important to see, and there are a lot of learnings out of this COVID-19 pandemic. So therefore this particular topic have a very special place, I suppose, for this particular conference. And thank you very much for inclusion of this particular topic in the among the mathematicians, to deal with, or to make you refresh, or to have everyone idea about how the research in the field of health sciences goes off. So we'll be dealing with synthesis of scientific evidence in health sciences. What are the methods? How we build up the evidence? Then, in brief, we'll go through the journey of COVID-19. I'm sure that during these 3 days, you must have gone many times through the timeline of events occurred since more than 1 year of this particular COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll go hurriedly through the journey of COVID-19. Then we'll see the current medical evidences. Especially, we'll go little bit small in detail with respect to therapeutic interventions, which were evolved over a period of time since this pandemic was brought to the notice. And then we'll see what we have learned out of this pandemic. My first and very much important this figure is a triangle, and this triangle is called triangle of evidence. And especially at the bottom line, you can see ideas, editorials, and opinions. This triangle denotes hierarchy of research that we see, and generation of evidence over a period of time in a particular topic or in a particular subject. So say for example, if we take any disease, say for example HIV and AIDS, before 1970, 75 and 80s, we have not heard of anything called HIV. But after 80s, I think 81 onwards,
Sir,
we saw
sorry to trouble
there
you,
were
sir.
some cases of very unusual cancer, very unusual fungal infections among few of the individuals belonging to homosexual group
Sir,
in
can you hear me?
America. So it was published that there are 5 men with this homosexual history were presented with unusual carcinoma, and this was actually brought retrospective attention of everybody, that after the 5 cases those were reported, after that there were a lot of cases, like cluster of cases were brought to the focus, brought to the notice. And then the medical attention was being very much focused on this particular HIV. And further journey, we all know that it was one of the most feared disease of the human beings. Coming to some at a very grassroots level, like there is something called IDSP, Integrated Disease Surveillance Project. In this particular terminology, what we do is in this program, what we do is we pay much attention to what is going on in the community, what is going on in the population, and therefore we pay some attention to some kind of maybe rumors, some kind of news that we get from the community. And you will not believe that in every primary health center there must be one register. It is called rumor register, and the medical officer working there have to note down all the rumors that whatever he might have heard during the posting, that somebody is ill with some other disease, or somebody is died of something that they don't know, something like that. So all those rumors have to be noted down, and it is scientifically proven that out of all the rumors, say for example minimum 20 to 30 such rumors are really a fact, that these rumors are really true. So it starts anything. It starts with some kind of discussion among the community, some kind of news among the community, and then if we investigate, one or two or three out of 10 are
Excuse
certainly
me,
be
sir.
the
Can you
facts.
hear us?
So it starts like that, and then what we do is if the somebody some person or some individual comes with some signs and symptoms, then they are subjected to certain kinds of tests or clinical examination. And then these particular some individuals, like I have given example of HIV AIDS, five homosexuals came with Kaposi sarcoma, or came with fungal infection, which are very rare. And those particular individuals were studied, and those individuals actually report was published in a form of case series. So there a case may be presented, unusual presentation, they are called case report, and some 4 5 cases or their sequelae they are shared, they are called case series. So case report, case series, rumors, and somebody's ideas, some scientific person's opinions also may start, and evidence, maybe the quality of evidence may be little less quality, but that has to be investigated, that has to be paid attention, so that we may not miss anything, any facts behind those particular opinions, those particular rumors, those particular unusual presentation of the cases. And then if we see those cases clustering somewhere, maybe in the form of time, like say the cases clustering within during some few days or few seasonal clustering, time bound clustering, or space related clustering, spatial clustering, or the personal characteristics, like say if we see HIV, this particular disease was in the beginning was very much clustered among some unusual practices, like people or men having sex with men, or those persons having multiple sexual partners. Those particular behavior was clustered among the characteristics of the persons were clustered. If we study those particular individuals in a as a group, not as a single person. So if we describe these particular cases with respect to time, with respect to place, with respect to their own characteristics, like say long distance truck drivers, they were very much prone for acquiring HIV infection, because they were away from the family for so long time, and that dragged them for going to prostitutes and fulfilling their sexual desire. So that actually brought the infection to the general community, their households, and then it has spread. So if we study these particular cases in detail, like say what are the characteristics those were common among the individuals who had acquired that, or the people who have come across with those signs and symptoms. So those kind of studies are called descriptive studies. We describe the disease with respect to, describe the condition with respect to time, what time the cases are occurred, like say within clustered within 4 days, 5 days. Like COVID also is timely, very much clustered at a place in that particular time at Yuan, and that had brought to the notice that there must be certain something unusual. So we describe the clinical condition, we describe the people, we describe their certain characteristics that make them high risk to acquire that particular clinical condition. So these studies are called descriptive studies. These stay very low with respect to evidence, the quality of evidence, because they may not give you one-to-one idea. Like say somebody who is long distance trucker, how to have HIV. It is not like that. So therefore, if somebody is not having HIV but he is at long distance truckers, then the particular hypothesis does not suits or does not fits into this particular causation idea. So therefore, descriptive studies are little bit lower to the quality of evidence. What happens next is, say for example, we have very small number of cases, those are presented with that particular unusual presentations. So we need to see that why these individuals are only affected, or why these individuals are only having these particular clinical symptoms, which may be rare or which may not have seen any time before. So therefore we have to test these particular individuals, like what is the particular thing which is common among, which is unique among the individuals those got affected, and the thing which is not there among the individuals who are not affected. Maybe the family members, or maybe the other drivers, other truck drivers, who are negative for HIV and those who are positive for HIV. If we compare them, we need to we can find out the important thing or the unique thing which makes these particular individuals prone for acquiring HIV. So these kind of studies are called case control studies. Case is a clinical condition or any condition of consideration, and the controls are people or the population which do not have this clinical condition, and therefore, say for example, long distance trucking is a particular factor. We can test this factor with respect to HIV positive status. So HIV positive status of certain individuals, say for example, we have only 10 cases. So 10 cases, we need to select 10 controls, like say age and sex. Usually we match age and sex. A case of 30 years old man have to be matched with almost 30 or plus or minus 2 years age, a man of that particular age. If we match, we can see that what are the characteristics which are present in the case and which is absent among the control. So that makes the study called case control studies. Selection of controls among these kind of case control studies is very important, because they should be as similar as possible with respect to the case under consideration, and some characteristics which are unique, we should able to identify those are present and may be related with the particular disease under consideration. Then if we have ample number of cases, then we can see that what are the factors which make them more prone for acquiring the disease. Say for example, a very well known example of cohort studies. Cohort is a group. So there may be cohort of birth, cohort like say in an hospital, individuals born on particular date, maybe a birth cohort, or in a village, individuals born on the particular date, or died on particular date, maybe a death cohort or a birth cohort, like that. So the cohort studies are a population which share common characteristic that make them cohort. Like say, there's a famous study called Framingham Heart Study. Framingham is a city in the European continent, and therefore people staying in that particular area makes them a cohort of that particular Framingham city. People living in that particular area. So what the study, how it has gone is like say, people who are not having the disease under consideration. The disease under consideration was coronary heart disease, like say heart attack. So they have selected individuals who are not having heart attack, but the hypothesized characteristics like say obesity, like say high cholesterol level, like say stress, they were selected like that. That the population may be having these kind of high risk conditions, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, but they are not having any kind of disease, or they are not having the disease under consideration, like say heart attack or coronary artery, the blood, the vessels that supply blood to heart. So they are not having any disease of that particular blood vessel. They may be having this kind of characteristic. They are selected like that. Then over a period of time, they were followed up. Like say in case control study, we do not know the temporal association of the particular individuals, like whether the condition has come first or the characteristic of the person came first. Like say long distance truckers, the HIV came first, and they have joined the trucking business, or the truck drivers were initially they were negative of HIV, and then they have acquired. So like say temporal relationship we are not able to establish in case control studies, because the case is already occurred, the event is already occurred, or the disease is already there among the individuals. In the cohort study, like say the disease of heart is not there at the time of starting of the study. Then what we do with this particular characteristic, say for example high blood pressure, high stress, so we follow these individuals. It's not like say everybody is having that particular condition, but in the population especially we see that those who are having these particular conditions, say for example age, or high cholesterol or high blood pressure, so those all individuals we follow, there may be clustering of cardiovascular disease cases among these kind of individuals, like say those who are having stress, those who are having high blood pressure, those who are having some genetic predisposition for heart disease, they may have this particular heart disease in short period of time, maybe 5 years. Actually core studies are usually long term studies, 5 years, 10 years, because it takes time to build up this particular disease out of the high risk condition that they have, maybe hypertension. With that hypertension coming to the disease condition, like say heart narrowing of the heart vessels, or say high cholesterol which blocks the particular arteries, and therefore the blood supply to the muscles goes down, and therefore person has heart attack. So it takes some time. So therefore core studies are little bit cumbersome to conduct, and it takes long time to establish some hypothesis. But especially with respect to non-communicable diseases, there are basically two types of disease, or three types of disease, like say trauma injury is also a kind of disease which does not have any positive etiology, especially with respect to some organism, or with respect to some characteristic. But infectious disease, there is some kind of agent, like say COVID-19, some virus is there, some bacteria is there. If we see, there are the Robert Koch was there, a scientist which have proved that how to establish a relationship of infectious disease agent and the disease. Like say in the beginning, these both agent and the disease. Say for example, we will take one example of TB disease and TB bacteria. So in the individuals, both the things will be there. So if we take out this bacteria from the person and inject to other person, then the person should have same TB disease. And the third thing is we should able to extract these bacilli from the second individuals in whom we have injected this particular bacilli. So these are the Koch's postulate. Like say somebody is having this bacteria or disease, we should able to extract this particular organisms or bacteria. We should able to inject that bacteria and produce the same kind of disease. And disease individuals, we should able to complete this particular cycle with extracting the same organism. So this is infectious disease hypothesis, how it goes, that this particular organism is positively associated with that particular condition. So this is infectious disease association. But non-communicable disease like heart attack, like depression, like there are so many other kind of non-communicable diseases. which do not have one particular factors. So there are multiple factors. Somebody is having high cholesterol, somebody is not having any cholesterol, much cholesterol or normal cholesterol. Still the person may land up into our disease. So it is not like say one-to-one relationship, but there is a multifactorial association, and cohort studies are the best kind of studies suited for this kind of non-communicable diseases. Coming to RCTs are called randomized control trial. Cohort studies also, there is no distinction that how much is the risk among the individuals who are exposed or individuals who are not exposed to the particular condition, maybe organism, maybe a vaccine, maybe a therapeutic agent. So in RCT, randomized control trial, usually this kind of methodology is used for testing drugs, and therefore they are called drug trials also. What we do in RCT, we deliberately expose a population of the individuals or people to this particular the condition. Say, for example, we wanted to test one drug. So what we will do, we will deliberately give that drug to one particular group, and we will deliberately deprive the other group, and then we will compare with this particular drug what is the effect among the people to whom this particular drug was introduced, and the we can say control group where the particular drug was not given. So these are called RCTs. RCTs are randomized control trials. Methodologically, they are the most kind of best kind of trials which generate potentially very much sound evidence for belief or for trusting the particular effect of the intervention or the kind of association of any kind of agent, say for example association of drug and bringing down the levels of cholesterol or bringing down the hypertension to normal. So this association is much more tested in randomized control trial or drug trial. So in RCTs or in trials, we deliberately expose a group for an intervention. So therefore, we have to we should not select an individual that this particular individual will we will give the drug. Another individual, he does not look good, he is not good to me, so I will not give intervention, I will not give drug to them. It should not be like that. It should be out of control of human being, so that this person's bias or selection bias should not occur. So there is a phenomena called randomization, which is the heart of RCT, randomized control trial, that it should not be in your hand. What you do, best example is you toss a coin. Those the person who is getting head will go in intervention group, and the person who is getting tail will go in control group. So therefore, getting head or getting tail, getting the individual into intervention group or control group is not under your control. So therefore, randomly the individuals will get distributed among the two groups, intervention and control group. This is the heart of the RCT. And this particular, even we can mask this, like say which are the individuals are given what drug. Like say we want to give some drug, but if doctor knows, then the outcome also may affected, like measuring a BP or measuring some level. If they know, there may be some introduction of some bias. So therefore, what we do is blinding. We give the drug to both the groups. The drug looks similar. Control group, we give an inert substance which do not have any effect. So that particular thing is called blinding, or that particular thing is called giving a placebo, so that a placebo effect is generated, and the psychological kind of characteristics are masked, are equally matched among the cases and controls, among the intervention and control groups. This is the best kind of evidence generated for especially used for drug trials. What we do is, next kind of good evidence is a systematic review. You must have heard systematic review and meta-analysis. What we do is we collect all those RCTs together, like say and randomized control trial done in India, randomized control trial done in maybe China or Africa. So we collect all those particular trial, and here actually the role of numbers, a role of mathematicians is very good. Like say regression analysis, like say the comparing the data or pooling the data together and looking the data as if, like, say, this is a single trial, like a trial done in India, what is the data of that particular study? Trial done in Africa or China, what is the data of that particular study? We get all the data pulling together, and then we analyze it independently and we see how much is the effect. So that particular thing is called systematic review. Systematically, we analyze the study. What is the method? If the our intention is to see the intervention, say for example, a drug which reduces the cholesterol level. So our intention is to methodologically good studies only we'll select, or the randomized control trial only we'll select. So we will not deal with other observational studies or descriptive study, case control study. We will not go with those particular study. We will select only RCTs with good sound methodological approach, and then we will pool the data. All data will take together, and then a study may be done in 100 individuals in India, 100 individuals in China, 100 individuals in Africa. But if we pool the data, there will be a data of 300 individuals, and therefore you all know that the bias will certainly reduce if we improve the sample size. So therefore RCTs generate good kind of evidence. Meta-analysis are better than RCTs because we pool the evidence from different kind of settings, and this minimizes bias of the particular place, bias of the particular environment. So actually, meta-analysis and systematic review is the best kind of evidence, the methodology of generating evidence. Beyond this systematic review, say for example, we have a drug which is proven on statistical basis that systematic review or with meta-analysis, a drug is proved to lower down some kind of condition. Say for example, one drug given to the pregnant woman for emesis, hyperemesis that they get in first 3 months of getting pregnant. So that drug reduces the feeling of vomiting, the nausea, and we give that drug to the particular lady who is pregnant. But we give this particular intervention to one individual, but we don't know there must be some hidden factors which are not coming in front of the researcher, which is not coming to the notice of researcher, unless we test a group of individuals, or unless we bring the intervention to the group of individuals or at the population. We do not know the effect of that particular individual at a population level, because in the population there are the individuals which are having large number of characteristics, and we need to see that how this particular drug in those with the individuals with other characteristics. So building the evidence on public health on larger population is in the present scenario is the best kind of evidence. When the intervention goes to the public, and then out of public we get this particular review, like say this particular drug causes some kind of problem to the pregnancy, and it may be 1 in 1 crore, 1 in some billion population. But that you will come to know only when we give drug to those millions of population. 1 or 2 cases we can able to identify. So this particular public health interventions, testing at a public health level or generating evidence at a public health level is currently the best kind of evidence among this particular evidence pyramid. So I think this will give a good idea of how medical evidence is generated. Next, we'll see that what is the difference between treating an individual or evidence which is generated on RCT based or the individual based studies and public health studies. So especially the experimental studies which are done on individuals, like say drug trials, they are done in a RCT mode in evidence-based medicine. And in public health, like say we have done these vaccine trials, COVID vaccine trial in the population, which is beyond under control. Like say Modi ji is requesting everybody to take vaccine, and this particular behavior of this vaccine in the population may be something different than it behaves among the individuals which are under control. So experimental studies are under control individuals, or we can say the individuals may not be physically in the lab, but they all are under control. Whom we are giving drug, that is under our control, and we are analyzing that, that is also under our control. How much intervention we are giving, that is also under control. So therefore IRCTs are under control study. We do not know the intervention once it goes out to the public, which once it goes out of our particular control. So therefore we have to have the evidence which is voluminous, especially RCTs generate voluminous kind of evidence. 1 RCT, 2 RCT, 3 RCT, meta-analysis generate larger kind of evidence. But public health based evidence are maybe if we study even a small island, we may not study this one RCT in India, another RCT in China, another RCT in Africa. We may study a characteristic of individuals applying this particular intervention on a small island. That also will be very good evidence that can be generated. Time of intervention is usually short or short time because it is under control in evidence-based medicine or the clinical medicine, and at a population level it is usually a longer because we see effect over a long period of time. Professional training and expertise is very much formal, or consent also we need to take in a very legible way, in a very detailed way. But as this is a population based intervention, there is not much what the thing is, we are doing good for the person, and according to the rules of the consent we may not take any consent because it is betterment at the population level. Then decision making is at individual level for evidence-based medicine, and for public health evidence-based practice is at a team or at a group of individuals. Coming to Coming to exactly evidence-based public health is the development, implementation, and evaluation of effective program and policies to control disease in a short. So with this, we'll see the journey in short. Actually, we all know that at market in Yuan, China, we got to know that there may be some kind of unknown organism that has caused some kind of deaths, some kind of unusual respiratory distress among the individual that are brought to the notice on 31st December 2019, and since then we have seen the panic which has spread across the globe, and the most dangerous kind of pandemic we have seen, our generation has seen, is certainly the thing of to be in our memory. And how it has started is, like say, they have seen some kind of clustered cases at one particular area, and we have, if same the kind of presentation was seen among the individuals who are gone out of that area, but they had history of visiting that particular area. So there is some kind of room to believe that something is wrong at that particular place, at that particular area. Like say, there is a seafood market in Yuan City, because the individuals who are suffering out of that particular respiratory distress were having characteristic of visiting that particular seafood market sometime or the other, and therefore the particular spatial relationship, individuals going to that particular place having the symptoms, is very much very much existent was there. And therefore after some period we have isolated the organism that was a virus, and we have seen that already some it match with MERS and SARS virus, which we had some experience before, and how that has carried away the idea that this particular COVID-19 disease is caused by virus, which may be having some characteristic which may be similar to MERS or SARS. So what things may be common? What we have initially thought that the MERS or SARS is transmitted by fomites. Fomites are the surfaces which are infected by the particular individuals under consideration, and the same surface or food or cloth which came in contact with the case as shared by the normal individuals, and through that they got infected. So, therefore, these fomites play a very important role. The clothes or the utensils used by the person. The next room of what you say transmission is through droplets infection. Droplet is once we cough or some particle come out of our mouth or nose when we blow air in the form of speaking, coughing, sneezing. So those particles are suspended in the air. They do not settle down, or they do not go up because of their weight. They settle down in the air. They suspend in the air. So therefore, they are called droplets. And the people who are near to that particular case are seen that they are getting infected easily. So these three kind of modes are there, which makes the individuals around the case are susceptible. So therefore, we thought that COVID also must be like MERS or SARS, but now the good evidence is there that it does not spread with the touch and all those things. But further, actually, we all know how it has started, and after that, how the evidence was generated. We'll go a little bit detail with respect to the clinical decision making, which has affected, or which was evolved over a period of time. If we go through pandemic since 31st December 2019 till the present day, actually, this is the status of the number of cases and deaths in the globe with respect to yesterday's figure. And you can see overall India is little bit performing better with respect to case fatality rate. Number of individuals died out of those who got infected. We have got a lesser kind of case fatality rate as compared to the other individuals ahead of us are having larger number of deaths and infection. Even Brazil, I deliberately put Brazil there, which is having more kind of case fatality rate as compared to India. So there must be some certain characteristics which make them more susceptible for death due to COVID, maybe age or maybe other characteristics like comorbidity and those kind of high risk behavior or high risk conditions which make them fatal, more fatal among those who are having that particular disease. Therapeutically, we will see in detail the therapeutics or the drugs which are brought to the notice out of this COVID-19. So we have because of the panic, because of the pandemic, because of the large or huge nature of this particular infection, this particular disease, in short period of time, there are large number of candidates were tested. Candidates are type of intervention which thought to be having some role in preventing the disease or preventing the infection or preventing the life with this particular disease. So these are the candidates out of which we thought that these particular things may help us in dealing with this particular condition COVID-19. So there are almost more than 80 antibody candidates. Those generate antibodies or ready-made antibodies that we inject in the patient. There were certain candidate compounds, cellular compound, around 34 compounds. They were registered for trial. Antiviral drugs, around 31 drugs were registered for trial against COVID-19. RNA-based therapeutic agents or candidates are around 6. Repurposed drugs, like say previously the drug was used for some kind of condition, but their use in COVID-19 was also explored. That those also conditions are registered for to be used in COVID-19, and there are some miscellaneous kind of things. Those also got registered for some effect against COVID-19. So these are the candidates which we have tested. Coming little bit detail in each of the candidate, like say drug or pharmacological intervention, if we see, the most heard drug about COVID-19 is remdesivir. Actually, people had done black marketing on all those social kind of news we have heard and read in the media. So remdesivir is an antiviral drug, and it was seen that morbidity and hospital stay, with respect to hospital stay, this is a good drug, but mortality does not prevent much, and therefore the drug may not be that much relied on preventing the mortality. Other drugs that we have seen is hydroxychloroquine. In the beginning, there is huge kind of dilemma whether to use it or not, because hydroxychloroquine is actually cardiotoxic drug. In little bit higher doses, it may cause death due to some issues with respect to heart conduction, and therefore it was not. Initially, it was advised. Even we transported a lot of they exported a lot of chloroquine to other countries, but later it was observed that it may not be good if it is taken little bit higher doses, and if we want to give this particular drug hydroxychloroquine, we have to monitor the heart activity, and we have to identify the this particular content, which is optimal content, and the content should not be beyond certain level, which may cause some heart issues. Next intervention was favipiravir. Favipiravir is also an antiviral drug, and if given early, it has reduced the chances of getting into complications like, say, respiratory distress. Then there is the two drugs are there in combination or in alternatively they have found good was lopinavir and ritonavir, especially in combination with other drugs. They were very good, and they were preventing in preventing mortality. They were seen to be good kind of intervention. Then there are some drugs which reduce the inflammation. So those drugs are sarilumab and tocilizumab and lenzumab, and all that kind of group which reduces the inflammation. Those reduces the mediators or enzymes that causes inflammation, like, say, interleukin. These are IL is interleukin 6 inhibitor drugs are against this interleukin 6, which is a precursor for getting inflammation in the lungs. And if inflammation is there, there will be a lot of slough will be there, lot of fluid will be there, and that will hamper the oxygenation across in the lung membrane. So therefore these kind of drugs also were tried and have proven to be a good clinical outcome if we use these particular drugs. Coming to some other pharmacological interventions which are really were initially thought to be good in some of the other conditions, and we have seen that they stood good in some of the countries, some trials, like, say, convalescent plasma. Convalescent plasma is like, say, ready-made antibodies. We give conversion plasma in many conditions, like if dog bite is there, that we give some anti-rabies serum. The serum which is generated injecting that particular virus or bacteria in horse especially, and the antibodies produced in horse or antibody produced in animal, that antibodies we inject in the individual who is exposed to that kind of disease, like, say, hepatitis also. So conversion plasma or ready-made antibodies are also used. They are not that much authenticatedly given permission in many of the countries. And other kind of drugs, like, say, uh, these tocilizumab kind of group, they are also the antibody, but they are not a one kind of antibody, but there is a mixture of antibodies with these particular drugs, and therefore mixture of antibodies also if we use, then the results must be good. So therefore combination or integrated approach also has been approved in some of the countries like Japan, UK, and for some drugs in US. Sotrovimab is also a combination of antibodies, and they are given
Sairam sir, can you hear
emergency
us?
use authorization in some
Sairam sir.
countries, and they have shown to be effective. Other group also, tocilizumab kind of group, which gives ready-made antibodies to the individual, are some in some countries they are found to be little better, but especially what happens is these particular drug are for at some particular at one particular level it has to be used. Say if the in the drug acts in a later stage at the level of high inflammatory stage, then if we give that drug in the early stage, there won't be any good outcome with respect to use of those drugs. So therefore it is very important to see that at what level of the disease, early stage or late stage, that we use. Vaccines also, I have enlisted some 3 vaccines over here, and we know that vaccine trials in the beginning was people were very much serious, very much anxious to get these particular vaccines, and especially COVID-19, the vaccines are fast tracked. So due to this fast tracking of the vaccine, it takes lot of courage, lot of what you say, reducing the time. So therefore it is burden on the government that as early as possible this particular vaccine should come. So therefore these are the important kind of vaccines these were developed. We can group these particular interventions into. I have told you that the intervention may be given in early stage or late stage. So these I have grouped some interventions which have a good standing. If we give them in early stage, they will prevent the disease and they will prevent the complications. Next thing is the other interventions I have grouped, like say they are used in the later stage. Like say once the person is already having inflammation and the CT score is little high, these drugs are proven to be good in kind of such kind of individuals. Other interventions, actually, I will not go in detail. Actually, I'm getting call from Dr. Vamsi that must be uh, uh, less time remaining. So this I think is the second last slide of mine. Other interventions also like lockdowns and banning the events, or expecting, or what you say, legally curtailing the gathering of individuals or closure of the schools. There they have also generated a lot of evidence, and basically these evidence need to be seen in a bulk, or in integratedly. We need to see that what kind of intervention. There must be mathematical modeling at so many places. We have also done the modeling of the disease. Actually the interventions which are used in combination or used in the integration are proven to be more effective in achieving this particular target. So what we have learned is something like pandemic. From the health side, we have learned that there requires a very good kind of preparedness for such kind of disease. And see, this particular disease is thought to be born out of interaction of human beings with bats or animals. So animal the particular organisms, they keep on coming from animal to human beings, human being to animal. But we have to start some kind of program to monitor this kind of zoonotic diseases which come to human being out of exposure to the animals. Then we need to generate some evidence based on public health practices, like how the lockdowns behaved in a way of controlling the disease, or how the intervention we have actually blessed with huge manpower in India to test any kind of the evidences. So therefore public health practice to be generate some evidence is for us is not much difficult, and therefore we should build up these particular evidences based on public health practice. Then integrated approach we already talked about, and at last I would like to say that promotion of technical expertise is also very much important. The institutional mechanisms we have to create, the institutes we have to build up to have a regular surveillance of those kind of unusual presentations, unusual diseases, and therefore we can identify the disease at a particular very early stage. And everybody must have heard the term called prevention is always better than cure, and therefore we can identify at a small level, we can prevent this particular pandemic. Certainly we can build up health of the individuals, and we can prevent the mortality and morbidity out of these kind of diseases. This is our institute located some 50 kilometers from Chennai airport, and I invite you all for in one visit to CLTRI, which is the Apex Institute working for leprosy. We have partnered the all kinds of interventions which are existent in leprosy, MDT, the drug or the processes, and all kinds of interventions which are currently being done. Are almost every intervention we are being the part of that. And lastly, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me opportunity to interact with you all, mathematicians, more wiser people in the form of numbers. And thank you one and all for patience listening. And I think little bit this is a refreshing session for you, something little bit different out of numbers. So thank you, Dr. Mamsi. I think I should stop sharing.
Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Over to
Can
Dr.
you hear?
Mamsi, please.
Can you hear us, sir? Can you hear us, sir? Your mic is muted. Maybe can you hear me, sir? So looks like I think, sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. So your mic was muted, maybe. So let us all thank Dr. Vijay Bhagat for his enriching lecture. I would say it's a kind of a refreshing. Surely it's a refresher from the regular kind of lectures which deal more with the mathematical modeling. I am very sure yesterday's evening panel discussion and today's sir's lecture is a kind of a different from the regular course of lectures that we have been having in the conference. Thank you, sir. Due to lack of time, we will not take any questions at this point of time. If there are any questions, I will mail to you, sir, from the participants. So let us all break. Thank you, participants, for being active listeners. So we'll break for lunch and we'll meet sharp at 2 o'clock for the afternoon session.
Thank you, Anando. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.